And hello, everybody. We're gonna let them go in. I still don't understand this, this whole thing with Zoom. It takes like forever to get people from the waiting room into the main room. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It takes as long as moving the people from the smorgasbord room to the main dining room for a wedding or bar mitzvah. I don't know. But anyway, my name's Ari Rosenbaum, and this is the second day of that 401k National Virtual Conference virtually. And of course, I always have to plug the live events because that's where I actually charge people money and it's live. We will be in Kansas City at Kauffman Stadium on May the 9th, and we're going to be at Angel Stadium, Anaheim in June. I want to say it's Thursday, June the 5th off the top of my head, or it might be June the 6th. And then we'll do Milwaukee in September. We'll probably get a date for that. And that will be it for 2025. Just come up with a few events. Go to that401ksite.com, $100 to attend, $50 per head if it's multiple people from the same firm. All the information's there. I talked to my buddy Larry, who books all the athlete appearances. We have a name for Kansas City. I can't say it until we get a confirmation, but somebody involved with the broadcast team that probably can tell us a whole lot about the Royals, who are actually a pretty good team now. But anyway, I wanted to introduce Chad and Eric from Asset Mark, who will start it off with their presentation. Take it away.
Well, thanks. My name is Chad Azera. I am the Vice President and Head of Sales and Strategy at Asset Mark. I've been at the firm about 6 months now. I've been in the industry for around 30 years. At Schwab and some other record keepers in this business. But Asset Mark, if you haven't heard of us, we're the nation's largest turnkey asset manager, TAMP. We have about 130 to 140 billion, depending on the week, in assets. We are really ramping up our offering in the retirement plan space. One of the reasons they brought me over here. Eric is my regional consultant that covers the East, and I will hand it off to him for his introduction and the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Chad. Appreciate it, and pleasure to be here and to spend some time with you all on this Friday. So my name is Eric Holter, Regional Retirement Consultant for Asset Mark Retirement Services, covering the Eastern Division of the country. And I have the distinction of being the most aerodynamic member of our family, of our team here. It is kind of like a family. So let me go ahead and share my screen here, and hopefully this comes across all right. Here we go.
I could see it.
Perfect. Thank you, Ari. Great. So a little bit about Asset Mark. This slide is actually a little outdated. It seems like we grow so fast that we can't keep these slides up to date. But so I've been with the company for almost 14 years. And just late last year, we closed an acquisition of all of the client accounts or TAMP assets of a little firm called Morningstar. And that added $12 billion to our AUM. So we're currently hovering around 148 billion, which is really a mind blower for me. When I started, like I said, about 14 years ago, we had about 14 billion assets under management. So it's more than a 10x growth over that time period. We currently work with over 12,000 independent financial advisors, offices across the country. We're headquartered in the Bay Area in Concord. We also have offices in Los Angeles, Phoenix, Chicago, Atlanta, and then an army of remote employees across the country, such as myself and Chad. And yeah, we work with over 180,000 client households and several 100,000 retirement plans. So as Chad said, we're ramping up and expanding our offering, and I see a number of our partners have joined the call today too, which I'm excited about. So in terms of Asset Mark, we're a TAMP. And so if you're not familiar with what a TAMP is, it's essentially an ecosystem for independent financial advisors. And we provide everything from technology, service, and support to business consulting to financial planning. And one of those aspects is retirement plans as well. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts, but at its heart, what AssetMark is a 338 fiduciary investment manager. And we wrap that with white glove service and relationships. We have more folks out in the field than any of our competitors, and we're all about building those deep relationships and providing support to independent financial advisors. If you're not currently, I would imagine most people on this call are doing retirement plans, but if you're not, there's a lot of reasons to have retirement plans as a part of your practice. First and foremost are the flows. And so if you have a nice book of, 20, 30, $50 million in retirement plans, you start off on January 1st and you're going to have 3 million, 5 million, $10 million in flows. That's automatic production and business for you. In addition to the flows, it also opens up opportunities for you to gather new clients from that, from the business. So, meeting with the owner, meeting with the executives, meeting with the employees and staff, and you'll become that trusted partner where if they have a liquidity event, such as they leave the company or they have an old rollover or they get an inheritance or an insurance payout, they're going to want to look for an advisor, somebody to talk to, and you'll be that person that comes forefront of mind. And the last thing I would mention is really when we're thinking about the value of your practice, and if someday you are going to sell your practice, the more lines of business that you have, studies have shown that if the investment management is outsourced, if it's fee-based instead of transactional, and then the multiple lines of business just increases the multiplier on your practice. So having those retirement plans as part of the complexion of your book of business is definitely going to increase the value of that practice if you ever go to sell it somewhere down the road. Okay, so AssetMark as a 338 fiduciary. What we are is an investment firm, and that's our core competency, and that is our wheelhouse. What we are not is a record keeper or a TPA, and so we partner with the best in the industry for that. And what AssetMark is really known for on the investment side is very rigorous due diligence. We have an award-winning team of CFAs based out of our headquarters in the Bay Area that all they do day in and day out is research, select, and monitor best of breed money management capabilities and bring it onto our platform to make it available to financial advisors for both their wealth management clients and for their retirement plan clients. And our due diligence team, I've talked to a lot of these money managers and they are pretty ferocious and they've definitely earned their awards, and they strike fear in the hearts of these financial firms when they show up to do their annual due diligence. It's very thorough. And yeah, so I'll leave it at that. But so we back that up with a 338 fiduciary. Again, I'm sure most of you on this call know what that is. But just for if anybody who doesn't know what that is, a 338 fiduciary is actually that's a code within ERISA. So within ERISA, it says that the business owner is responsible for researching, selecting, and monitoring investments. Now, I don't know about you, but most business owners I've talked to, they're not pouring through Morningstar, looking at fund ratings and fretting over their investment menu in their 401k plan. They're running their plumbing company or they're running their veterinary clinic, and they're not thinking about that investment menu. But it's a liability for them, and many don't realize that they're a fiduciary on the investments. So Section 338 of ERISA says that the business owner can hire and outsource a fiduciary investment manager and give them discretion over the investment menu and transfer that role and liability to them off their shoulders onto our shoulders. And because we have that award-winning due diligence team, we're able to backstop our investments with that 338. And if the business owner was ever to be sued over the investment menu in their 401k plan, AssetMark would stand before them in court. And so that's a very important protection for the business owner. In addition to that, we take great pride in our investment menu. And, I see statements for retirement plans day in and day out. And typically you're just looking at maybe some individual funds and possibly a target date series. We go far beyond that. And so our investment menu also includes about 8 professionally managed model portfolios to choose from. And these are models that are a subset of what we make available on the retail wealth management side of AssetMark. So you get access to portfolios from, Capital Group with the American Funds models. Capital Group actually runs custom portfolios and models for the AssetMark platform. Those are available inside of the retirement plans. Market Dimensions is a DFA portfolio. So if any of you are believers in the DFA philosophy, you're able to use DFA portfolios inside of our retirement plans. And I know on the retail side, you need to go through a course with Dimensional in order to be able to offer their investments. That's not true on the retirement plan side. In addition to that, we have portfolios that are socially responsible and faith-based, Judeo-Christian faith-based. And for the right plan sponsor, those are very attractive, and it's something that catches their eye and that they, want to make available to their employees. So yes, a very robust investment menu. In addition to those model portfolios, we have about 15 individual funds that are hand selected from our due diligence team. They're a good mix of active funds and passive funds, international and domestic, stocks and bonds. And then lastly, we have target dates. Our current offering is Vanguard and American Funds R6 share class. And just a note on kind of fee structures. So you're probably aware that the industry is, there's kind of the old way of doing fees in the retirement plan and the new way of doing fees. And the old way is, having revenue sharing and having hidden fees tacked onto the expense ratios of the funds and having asset-based record-keeping fees. The industry there's a lot of litigation that's kind of forcing a sea change over the last 5-10 years. We're on the forefront of that, so we don't do any revenue sharing in our plans whatsoever. The fees are all completely transparent, and our record keeper partners all have flat record keeping fees, not asset-based. So all of that serves, again, the plan sponsor and reducing liability and risk for them. Now, we currently work with 4 record-keeping platforms, and we're looking to expand that as well. We've got a couple in the pipeline for 2025. But what I want to double-click on here is a very unique capability that advisors that work with AssetMark have been exploiting like crazy. So with one of our record-keeping partners, which is Epic Retirement Plan Services, we have an integration back to our retail wealth management platform. And again, there's a much broader set of investments available on that eWealth Manager platform. But what this integration, this API integration allows you to do is that you can peel out, if you have a plan on Epic, you can peel out an individual participant balance, move it over to our platform, eWealth Manager, and that opens up the entire AssetMark platform. There's 40 some money managers there, including SMAs, tactical solutions, and what most commonly gets utilized are the custom high net worth strategies. So if you're at all familiar with like a Clark Capital, a City National Rockdale, a William Blair, these are personalized money managers that have household minimums anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. And you can access them, and it's typically for the business owner. So you can say to that business owner, look, we got your plan on Epic, AssetMark's doing the investment management, you're getting fiduciary protection from them. They've got a very robust investment menu for all of your employees, including model portfolios, target dates, and individual funds. For you having a large balance in the plan, we can access a broader set of investment capabilities through this account window. I can get you a custom portfolio that's got individual securities, your own personal portfolio manager. And by the way, this money manager manages on a household level. So we can bring in other accounts that maybe you as the advisor don't have access to today. Maybe there's an IRA over at Schwab. Maybe there's a trust account or a taxable investment account. So all of those are fair game to help you go deeper with the client and gain more wallet share with them. And I'm not aware of any other platform where you can get this level of sophistication, customization for those high net worth investors. So
just want to clarify too that it's open for everybody, all participants. I mean, there is, some of the investment managers have lower minimums, so it's open to every.
Yeah, great point, Chad. Obviously, you can't discriminate with what's available from an investment standpoint. So it's broadly available to all of the participants. The folks that we see utilizing it the most are typically, you know, executives and the business owner. Okay, so a couple other plan types that we offer. We do solo K plans, profit sharing plans, 403Bs, both individual and group 403Bs. We offer cash balance plans, traditional pension plans, and a pooled employer plan. And so the next thing I want to kind of double click on is that pooled employer plan. Sorry, got ahead of myself here. So pooled employer plan. This is, as most of you know, a new structure from the Secure Act 2.0. And it's basically allowing multiple employers or really unlimited number of employers to package together into a single plan and give them the benefit of economies of scale on pricing. So where we see this beneficial is, you know, the AssetMark platform fee has tiers built into it. The PEP today is about $22 million. And I've got a $9.5 million plan rolling in there in April. So that's going to be well over $30 million. And that's going to cut costs on the platform fee in half for everybody that's in the plan. In addition to that, the PEP includes 316 administrative fiduciary and 402A named fiduciary. So it's really designed to be an easy button and as outsourced and hands-off as the business owner can legally be. So we partner with PCS on this PEP, and they do the record keeping, they do the TPA, they do the custody, they do the 316, AssetMark again, consulting with the advisor, 338 investments, and that's kind of our role within it. So we've recently seen some traction with this. You know, kind of when this structure came out, it was attracting a lot of startup plans, which I do believe that it is a good solution for startup plans. But we're starting to see a shift and seeing more and more plans go into the PEP that are either on the verge of being audit eligible or they are audit eligible. So if the plan has hit that mark of 100 participants and now subject to an audit, and those audit costs can be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 a year. By joining a PEP, those audit costs are now spread amongst all the audit eligible participating employers in the plan. So it's going to be a very significant reduction in the cost on the audit. So we're seeing a lot of that play out. If you're going after audit eligible plans, a PEP could be a good solution. And then kind of selfishly on, you know, the advisor side, when you take a plan and you put it into a PEP, it no longer has its own individual Form 5500 and therefore is no longer discoverable for prospecting. So that is a way for you to protect your plans and to build a moat around them and shield them from being in that cycle of 5500 Judy Diamond type of prospecting. So, so the PEP has gained a lot of traction. So kind of the thing that is the hallmark that AssetMark is really known for is just a very high level of service. And that flows through on the retirement plan side. We have teams of people, and it's truly an outsourced solution for the advisor. For you, we don't really want advisors down in the weeds of dealing with password resets and beneficiary change forms and you know, payroll trainings and that sort of thing. AssetMark has teams of people. All of our record keeping partners have teams of people. By the way, I would like to mention the record keepers that we work with. I already mentioned Epic Retirement Plan Services and PCS. We also work with July Business Services, which is a very high touch boutique shop that offers, you know, it's an independent record keeper and they offer very high levels of service and technology, and they include 316 on all of their plans. And then we also are available at Ascensus, and we're looking to bring on some additional record keepers this year. We're going to be going live later this year with Vestwell and also with Empower, which we're very excited about. And our goal within the next couple of years is to be broadly available at a couple dozen of the top record keepers in the country. So we'd love to help you get started. If any of what we talked about this morning has piqued your interest, if you're thinking about needing to add a 338 to any of your plans at the record keepers that we're currently available at, if you have retirement plans that are looking for a new home, if you are currently prospecting and looking to grow your business and wanting some assistance and support, if you have business owners or participants with large balances in your retirement plans you think could benefit from a custom high net worth strategy, we would love to talk to you. So we have myself and my counterparts and Chad available here. We'd love to start that conversation. And that's really kind of everything that I had prepared today. We always save the most important information for last. I don't know if we have things open for Q&A or I
There
haven't really
is,
been.
and there is a question.
Awesome.
So, who is the ultimate parent owner of AssetMark, and is that a foreign entity?
Oh, that's a great question. So, again, I've been here for 14 years. We've gone through many different ownership changes and different structures. And currently we are owned by a private equity firm that's domestically based in Chicago called GTCR. And they're very big in the fintech space. So that acquisition happened, I want to say third quarter of last year. Prior to that, we were publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol AMK. Obviously, we've gone private now. And then at that point, our largest shareholder was an international firm, HTSC. It's like basically the Schwab of China. And our competitors love to beat us up over that.
Sure.
We personally thought they were great owners. They were very hands off and let us reinvest in our business. But just kind of the geopolitical atmosphere and the optics of that, they were a great owner. We're also very happy to be privately held by a domestically owned private equity firm based out of Chicago at this point. So.
When
Yeah,
I was a kid in
great
the
question.
80s, it was a big deal if you were Japanese owned. And so now it's changed over time, but their economy and the Chinese economy and whatnot.
Yeah, a lot of geopolitics going on there. So
Exactly.
we're happy to have shed that conversation.
And GTCR I mean, they're also owner of CapTrust and some other very large.
Eric, people want contact info. I already got 2 questions, email, that kind of stuff.
Yes. Maybe I'll just put it in the chat so everybody can grab that.
Okay. Yeah, because this goes on YouTube, but you don't want somebody to, get your email and all of a sudden, I don't know why, but somebody would do that.
Awesome. Any other questions?
Let me see. I think that's it. No, actually, just so that in the chat.
All
Actually,
right.
hold
Perfect.
on.
If you have any startup opportunities, please send them Chad's way. If you have any conversion opportunities, I'm your guy. Just kidding.
Okay, guys, thanks so much. Let me just talk about what we're going to have in a couple minutes. Amber is going to be with EGPS. She'll talk about cash balance on 316 at noon. Penchex will be on talking about their solutions and dealing with Secure 2.0. MUN CPA will be on at 12:30 or a couple minutes before, talking about your plan needs an audit. Now what? 1 o'clock, Adventist Financial Partners is going to be talking about the new administration affecting your 401k plan. At 1:30, I speak. It's deja vu all over again is my topic. And 2 o'clock, we finish it out with Pacific Life. We're going to talk about lifetime income, the how and why of DCLI. And there's Mark Messier with me. Amber, you ready to go?
I am.
Can you?
I think you may have to unblock me there, Ari.
Yeah, ask to start video. Okay. Okay. There you go.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. I appreciate the time today, and I am happy to be here. So my name is Amber Waddell, and I'm with Economic Group Pension Services. We are a third-party administrator, and I am going to talk a little bit about cash balance plans and 316 plans today. So I think if you have any questions, just pop them up in the chat. I'd just like to confirm that everybody can see my screen.
I can.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I I'm going to assume that everybody at the conference here today has at least heard of cash balance plans, but I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper dive, and we'll just kind of dive right in. So I'm going to talk about the difference between cash balance and defined benefit, and really when you're likely to encounter one versus the other. So on the screen here, there's really not a ton that I'm going to go into, except for I want you to kind of visually take note of the owner expense in these two scenarios. So defined benefit plans, cash balance plans, they are basically pension plans, right? So they provide a lifetime benefit kind of payable through retirement. It's usually written into the adoption agreement as a formula of pay and service, sometimes written as a percentage of compensation, sometimes written as a flat dollar amount. These plans are funded by the employer, not by the employee. They are qualified, and they are subject to limits, just like we see in the defined contribution world. But what happens is, rather than the IRS defining what we can contribute per year today, like we see in the 401k space, they essentially define what you can have accumulated at your theoretical retirement. So cash balance plans, also defined benefit plans, kind of mechanically, they are sometimes referred to as statutory hybrid plans, which means they have characteristics of both for defined contribution and defined benefit. But they carry along some of the requirements of a traditional defined benefit plan. So they are consisted of required contributions. So once you've made the commitment to have the cash balance plan, you do have to make contributions to it. You do have to have an actuary to certify those formulas and to sign off on your 5,500. And many of them are subject to PBGC coverage. So the PBGC is the Pension Benefits Guarantees Corporation. It's a government entity that basically acts kind of like insurance over these plans. All plans are subject to them except for many of the plans that we will encounter on a day-to-day basis. So professional service companies with fewer than 25 employees, which is kind of the vast majority of what we will probably run into, will be subject to PBGC coverage. There are pros and cons to that I won't get into today, but please feel free to follow up with me afterward. These are also pooled investment accounts. So the entire plan and all the participants typically exist in one account, invested the same way, and the employer bears the investment risk. And really what that means is you can get to that theoretical lump sum benefit at retirement by way of contribution or by way of investment return. So you're typically going to see these plans a little bit more conservatively invested because we kind of want that predicted contribution annually to stay the same. So if the investments do fantastic and they perform really well in excess of what we were expecting, then that's going to ultimately reduce the amount that the employer can contribute into the plan and therefore deduct. They don't typically like that. Inversely, if the investments underperform or there is a dip in the market, it is on the employer to make up that deficit. So if there's a loss in the account, the employer has to bring everybody's funding back up. They don't like that type of unpredictability either. So you're going to see these very conservatively invested. But it does allow for much larger tax contributions, tax deductible contributions, which is what the employers are ultimately attracted to. And the reason for that being, again, the IRS is defining at retirement what we can have accumulated, and whatever it takes for you to get there is what you can contribute to the plan and tax deduct. So if you're older, maybe a later saver, those can be very large numbers and have a meaningful impact on your tax liability on an annual basis. What we typically are looking for to kind of make that exact scenario play out in real life is, like I said, oftentimes later savers, and you're kind of searching for these two sweet spots. So you want to have good age disparity in your plan. So you want to have an older owner population and a somewhat younger staff population, really because what happens there in practice is if I'm 20 years old and I have a theoretical 42-year runway to retirement, I have the power of compound interest working in my favor over a much longer period of time. What that does practically is it allows our older business owners to contribute very large sums of money towards their retirement. That runway is much shorter, while funding not as much for me because I'm going to make up a lot of that deficit through investment returns. So you will see oftentimes cash balance plans coupled with a 401k profit sharing plan. That is pretty typical when there are employees in the demographic. So you'll have the 401k plan with a profit sharing provision running alongside a cash balance plan. We do that for a specific reason. Obviously, it's great to have the 401k plan and everybody have the freedom to invest that however fits their personal situation, which is not an option that often exists in the cash balance plan. But also the assumed interest rates are different. So the 401k plan is compounding at a higher rate, theoretically, than the cash balance plan. So you will see the staff members get a bulk of their contributions in the 401k plan, while the owners are getting the bulk of their contributions in the cash balance plan. Same tax deductions, same availability. So if you are contributing to a cash balance plan, the company does deduct it just like a 401k plan. So as we discussed, the defined benefit plans and cash balance plans, they have some minor differences. And I'm going to kind of keep this to what you're going to practically encounter. So most of the time, if you are writing retirement plans and you're working in the small business space, which we all are because that is the vast majority of businesses that exist in America, you're probably only going to have traditional defined benefit plans for owner-only scenarios. So if you have two partners and they have no employees, you may end up with a traditional defined benefit versus a cash balance. Cash balance is really going to be the solution when there are employees that are eligible for the plan. It's easier for them to understand. They get kind of a statement once a year that says, hey, this is your benefit. And that's really what employees want to know. They don't really want to know what their hypothetical monthly or annual payment in retirement will be. They want to know what happens if I terminate employment tomorrow. So cash balance solves for that a little bit. It's also easier in a cash balance plan to kind of treat subsets of the employee demographic in a group setting rather than everything being so heavily age-based. So vesting, 401k plan, we're probably all familiar with the vesting that exists in 401k plans and the options that are available. You're essentially going to be looking at anything from 100% immediately vested up to a 6-year graded vesting schedule. In the cash balance world, that's a little bit different. So your maximum vesting window is going to be 3 years. Most of the cash balance plans that I encounter have a 3-year cliff vesting. So basically meaning in years 1 and 2, a participant will not be vested. And then once they reach 1,000 hours in the 3rd year, they will become 100% vested. So you do have to keep up oftentimes with 2 separate vesting schedules in either plan. So what are you guys looking for? I will tell you, most of the time, very early on in my conversations with plan sponsors, I'm going to ask them a question, and that question is going to be, forget what you think the legal parameters are. How much do you want to save for retirement on an annual basis? And if they come back to me and they say, probably $15,000, we're going to be having a simple IRA conversation. Say something like $50,000, we're probably having a 401k potentially cash balance conversation. Or I'm sorry, potentially profit sharing conversation. They throw something at me like $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, we're going to talk about cash balance. It may not be a fit for their business. It might not be a fit for their risk tolerance, but we'll probably have the conversation based on the feedback that they're giving me. And I think that that's an easy question that everybody can incorporate into their practice so that they kind of know which service providers they need to talk to and which subject matter experts they need to reach out to. There are some pitches with cash balance plans and defined benefit plans. So although most plan sponsors are implementing these plans as a way to mitigate their tax liability, these are not tax shelters. These are retirement plans. So the IRS does want to see these plans in place for a permanent, or at least intending to be permanent, life. So I get calls all the time from plan sponsors that say, hey, I had a great year and my CPA says I should look at a defined benefit plan or a cash balance plan. But during the conversation, I also find that the great year is also an anomaly year. So your clients, your plan sponsors, they need to be comfortable funding these plans 4 years. That's what I would say. You might talk to someone who's a little bit more aggressive than me, and they may say, hey, 3 years is the benchmark. Someone more conservative than me may tell you 5. I think I just fall in the middle, and I stick with 4. So you want these businesses to have consistent cash flow. You want them to be able to fund the plan. It doesn't mean that the plans are completely inflexible, that you can't kind of pivot when things happen. They can be frozen. They can be terminated. Stuff happens. We get it. You sell the business, you can shut the plan down. You retire, you can shut the plan down. Like I said, later savers is typically who this is going to be a good fit for. Somebody who's already maxing out their 401k plan, already maxing out the profit sharing component of their 401k plan, and they have a need for more. So here is just kind of a little example, and I can always take a deeper dive if anybody's interested offline, but this is what kind of your standard, works pretty well, cash balance illustration will look like. So you've got your 2 equity partners. In this case, this is a law firm. You've got other attorneys who are highly compensated individuals. You've got basically the remainder of your staff. So you're going to see kind of the same components when you have cash balance and 401k together over and over and over again. So they're typically going to be 401k provision, safe harbor 3% non-elective. That is because it goes to everybody, regardless of what they contribute, and therefore can count towards the minimums that must be met in both the profit sharing and cash balance testing. So you're going to notice on this particular illustration that none of our highly compensated individuals, including your partners, are going to receive a safe harbor 3% non-elective. That is by design. A lot of times we exclude those HCEs and the owners from receiving that safe harbor contribution. We make up for it in the profit sharing and the cash balance contributions. It just adds flexibility. You'll also see plans where they're not excluded, and there's nothing wrong with that. But essentially, between the 2 plans, we are benefiting the owners, the 2 equity partners. 86 cents on every dollar that goes into this plan is going directly to their account. I find that it typically makes good tax sense when this ratio is 65% or more to the owners, but business owners don't typically get expressly interested until we've surpassed the 80% mark. So succession planning is also a tool that you can use through cash balance plans. It's not terribly common, but it is possible. And probably over the course of your career, somebody's going to ask you about it. So essentially, this is a way for business owners to have another partner, typically a minority partner or a family member, fund their retirement accounts as a means of purchasing the business. There's a lot of moving parts in these types of arrangements, and normally some attorney drafted outside agreements that kind of go hand in hand with the adoption agreements and the plan documents themselves. But it is an effective way to kind of transfer that ownership from one person to another without roping in the tax implication. I would probably prefer, as a business owner, a successful business owner, to have some tax deferred payments rather than a lump sum that I have a tax implication for. So here's just an example of kind of how that can play out. In this scenario, the son and daughter are buying out the husband and wife or the spouses. So you can see that they're really not getting a benefit. What's really happening in practice here is they are funding the benefit for the parents as a means to purchase shares. Like I said, any questions pertaining to cash balance, defined benefit plans, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. We have a great actuarial team in-house, so we are prepared to field any questions that you may have. The other topic that I really wanted to spend a little bit of time on today, and Eric gave me a good segue, is 316 fiduciary services. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with the term. What it means, a little bit more of a gray area. So basically, most of the time when a plan sponsor wants to outsource 316 fiduciary liability, it refers to the code in ERISA. So you got 338, 321, 316. So 316 is going to be that administrative counterpart to the investment fiduciaries. So most of the time, we will find that plan sponsors reach out for a number of reasons, but at its core, we know that there are things that fiduciaries must do. They have to act in the best interest of the plan participants, they have to act prudently, and they have to follow the terms of the plan document. And I think this is where things get a little sticky for a lot of the plan sponsors out there. Most of the time, I find that everybody wants to act prudently and everybody wants to act in the best interest of the participants, but not everyone day in and day out is interpreting plan documents. So sometimes you can outsource some of these functionalities, and that is where 316 comes in. Why would plan sponsors want to seek out a 316 fiduciary? They understand that the 401k plans are regulated, right, as well as cash balance plans. Administration requires expertise and patience, and also research. As we all know, Secure 2.0 that passed in 2022 really had a lot of us kind of relearning how to do our jobs, relearning what is required, what's not required, and you can make mistakes, especially if you don't live and breathe in this industry every day. Sometimes those mistakes are costly, and they are painful to get through. So a lot of times plan sponsors will come to me and ask for 316 services because they've had a mistake, and they kind of realize that perhaps they weren't as well equipped as they thought they were to handle all aspects of the plan. So 316 services can include the things that I have listed here on this slide. They can include other things, but the big ones are payroll review and integration. We fortunately have a lot of automation in our industry that didn't exist 15 years ago, and that's been fantastic, particularly on the contribution submission front. So now a lot of the payroll providers, the record keepers, they're syncing up, they're building bridges. Data is flowing without the plan sponsor to manually intervene, and that's been fantastic. That's not the case for every plan sponsor, for every payroll provider, for every record keeper. So 316 a lot of times can build that bridge if it doesn't already exist. Participant enrollment, and this has been a really hot topic for me lately with the rise of the long-term part-time inclusion. A lot of plan sponsors are having difficulty figuring out who's eligible and what they're eligible for and when they have to include them. So tracking eligibility and handling participant enrollment, especially if there are gaps on the record keeper side, particularly due to that long-term part-time ruling, that's been a really hot topic here lately, and 316 can solve for some of that. Employee communication, again, making sure they get all the materials, make sure they get the enrollment forms, make sure they know when they can sign up for the plan. Loan administration, as we all know, when you add loans to a 401k plan, that creates transactions. And particularly if you are in a scenario where you do not have integration, that creates a lot of transactions that the sponsor or the fiduciary now has to track. This is typically a function of a 316 fiduciary, so offloading that for a plan sponsor can be really valuable. Distribution review and processing. I know all of the employers that I work with are thrilled when they do not have to sign off on distributions. So hiring a 316 to take over that function can be valuable as well. And then plan compliance and reporting. Again, most of the plan sponsors that we are working with, they're not used to interpreting adoption agreements. They're also not used to interpreting testing results, understanding how the testing works, figuring out why they failed, if they failed any particular test. So having a fiduciary set of eyes on that to just interpret, correct, and make sure that everything is running in accordance with ERISA is also quite valuable. Record retention. I will say this is an area where I feel like at times automation can do us a little bit of a disservice. So I always encourage my plan sponsors to keep very good records. And I think what automation has done for a lot of us is it's eliminated that need to kind of have a physical file. So a lot of times the record keepers are going to have beneficiary information, right? But no service provider is permanent. So when you transition and you hire someone new, sometimes all those records don't come along with you. So it is always important, even if you are outsourcing, for our plan sponsors to maintain good records. I think one of the things that is a little bit confusing in our industry is that 316, as I've talked about, kind of encompasses a lot of tasks. And just because you're performing the tasks doesn't necessarily make you a 316 fiduciary. And therefore, we've gotten into this space where we just market a lot of things as 316 that may or may not actually be 316. A good example of something that would be handled by a 316 fiduciary, and one that is a hot topic right now, is enrollment. Like I said, especially if there are gaps on the record keeping side. So, figuring out who's eligible, tracking that eligibility, keeping track of who's enrolled, who hasn't, negative consent forms, mailing kits that have to be mailed versus emailing kits, making sure that all of the IRS and DOL requirements have been met, the records have been maintained, and each and every eligible employee has received everything that they needed to receive to be able to sign up for the plan if they so choose, or in some cases now, opt out of the plan if they so choose. So this is a really hot button right now. I think if you have clients who are expressing difficulty with tracking eligibility or sending notices or ensuring that their employees have what they need to sign up for the plan or opt out of the plan, it might be a trigger to look into maybe some of these 316 functions. So, a lot of confusion, a lot of things that say 316 that aren't 316, some things that are 316 that don't say they're 316. It's really important for you and your clients because they're going to be looking to you to advise them most likely on how to go about this process. Read the service agreements. It's going to point to who has liability, right? You need to know who is responsible in a legal way for certain functions of the plan. Who's tracking eligibility? Well, maybe the 316 provider says they're tracking eligibility, but you read that document and it really says, hey, we're going to apply that eligibility, but we're not taking liability over that. That's really on the plan sponsor. So just make sure that you are reading those service agreements. Pretty easy way to find out if you're dealing with a fiduciary versus not a fiduciary is that person named in the plan document as a fiduciary? That eliminates a lot of the confusion in the gray area. So when we have plan sponsors that ask for 316 services, I tend to see this kind of on two ends of the market. Small businesses where maybe there's just not enough expertise in-house to be confident administering the plan, or sometimes if the business owner is the person that's going to be responsible for administering the plan and they just admittedly don't have time. They don't have time to be the best fiduciary that they can be, to research, to apply. A lot of times those plan sponsors will seek out outsourcing. On the other end of the spectrum, big companies, right? So companies that have HR departments, have expertise, have exposure, but they are more interested typically in the fiduciary work, not so much the tasks, the liability, the legal liability. Sometimes if the plan is more complex, if the parameters, the provisions of the plan are more difficult to determine, to apply, that can be a reason to seek out a 316 fiduciary. But ultimately, the clients don't know what they don't know. So again, they're going to be looking to you. So it's important for you to kind of know those keywords and when to seek out some 316 solutions or some 316-like solutions. So full versus light, and that's really kind of what I've been alluding to throughout this entire segment is we've spun ourselves into a web of marketing everything as 316, whether it is or it isn't. So you'll probably run into some service providers that have multiple tiers of 316. It's kind of up to you to ask the prudent questions, to read over the service agreements, to understand what means fiduciary, what really means 316 as described in ERISA, versus what is taking on some tasks that typically a 316 fiduciary would handle. So make sure you get kind of clear instructions from your plan sponsors about where their difficulty lies. Is this a task situation? Is this a legal liability situation that they're solving for? The one thing that I want to point out on this particular slide is a client with $1 million in assets, 900,000 of which are in his account, probably doesn't need as much legal liability coverage. Probably not looking for 316 in terms of, hey, help me mitigate my exposure here. But maybe running a business where they just don't have time. They don't have time to invest in the 401k plan, and so they may be seeking out some 316 related tasks. Okay, like I said earlier, if the document names you as a 316, then you're a fiduciary. That's a very easy way, cut and dry. You know who's a fiduciary, who's not. If not, you're really going to have to look to that service agreement to understand what liability is being offloaded from the plan sponsor and to what degree. Okay, so kind of key takeaways for you guys just as you try to grow your practices, and particularly if you're trying to do more in the retirement plan space. I think we all kind of get a little bit siloed into the 401k terminology. Just understand that those aren't the only plans that are available. It doesn't stop at 401k. You can always go to cash balance, defined benefit plans, and hearing your clients and understanding their needs is going to help you navigate when not appropriate to do so. And, you know, it's going to bring value because there's not a ton of financial advisors out there who are really well versed in all types of retirement plans. So the better you can understand the different types of plans that are available, the more valuable you're going to be to your clients. And it oftentimes opens up discussions to other opportunities, personal wealth opportunities. So you can kind of flex your muscles on the retirement plan side, and sometimes that does some good things for you in the personal space, even in the rollover space. So keep a good relationship with your CPA population. I will say that as well. They tend to be the trusted advisors, although I think, you know, I like to think sometimes I'm a trusted advisor. I'm not as trusted as the CPA. So if you are working in that population, it's really important to kind of have a good relationship there with them, because they're going to be able to alert you to tax situations that your client may or may not always be aware of, and give you kind of a window to make some suggestions into solutions for them. And we also give continuing education for CPAs, so if that's something that you're interested in, please reach out to me. Happy to help facilitate that. And it really just kind of talks about when and where to suggest what types of plans. And here's just a little bit of fluff about eGPS and why we're fantastic and how much we want to work with you. So please, like I said, don't hesitate to reach out. Here's my contact information. Ellen Haupt is my internal partner. You can reach out to either of us, and we're more than happy to field any questions. Speaking of questions, Ari, do I have any questions?
You do. You got two.
Okay.
Number one, my buddy Mike, he arrived late. You know, forgive him if it was addressed, but does the 316 always sign the 5,500 as the plan administrator?
Well, that's a great question, and it really depends on the services that are being offered. If the 316 fiduciary is a fiduciary, my experience is that they are always signing the 5,500. But I've seen plenty of 316 solutions where signing the 5,500 is not part of the services offered. So it really just depends on your particular service provider.
Yeah, it's consistent with what you said about the contract. It's all about the contract. You got to make sure that you bargained for, you know, you whatever you were promised, that it's in the contract and you're aware of all the duties that they're supposed to do. And to me, you know, there are 316s who don't sign 5,500. So to me, it's like, why are they 316? The whole point of a 316 is that they do that. But they're, you know, listen, I work for Producing TPA, that advisor business tried to claim that they weren't fiduciaries, even though they were an RIA. So that's the nature of the business. Next question. From another buddy, my limited experience is that 316 demand a more constant and perfect data stream from this client, which is an extra burden because the 316 is taking on liability. Constant demand for perfect info can become very annoying. What's your expert opinion on how to position this with clients?
That's a really good question, actually. And I think our best and most efficient client relationships are when we can gain access as the 316 fiduciary to their payroll system. That eliminates a lot of back and forth. Now, not every client is comfortable with that. And so if you have a situation where your 316 fiduciary service provider can't access the data that they need to ensure that everything is compliant, then you get into this situation of send me this, send me that, which I think is what you're alluding to there. And unfortunately, if access isn't possible, or the client is not comfortable handing over that access, or if your 316 fiduciary is not offering to insert themselves at that level of access, it can create kind of what you're describing, this constant need for more data, more data, more data. And unfortunately, I don't know that there's a great solution to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the nature of the job. I mean, when you're, I don't think a 316 is looking for the perfect situation, but you know, when you're doing something and you're liable for it, you want to get as much information. It's no different than, we're having a presentation by an auditor, but there are a lot of auditors over there that are more, are more demanding than other auditors because they're putting their name on there, you know, signing off an audit, and they want to make sure that everything is up to snuff, and that's just the nature of the business, and I get that. I do want to add that, you know, for our advisors in the business, to me, cash balance. So I was talking to Amber about some events that I used to go to, and it was always at a restaurant, local, you know, around the East Coast, whatever it was. And the most popular person in the room was the person pushing cash balance. And it was for a competitor, so I'm not going to mention the competitor to EGPS, but uh, plain design is to me like, you know, I like impressionist painters, but to me, plain design is like an art. And getting something, Amber made it wasn't a joke, but Amber asked that, you know, the client wants a certain amount of money. So we always had, when I worked for TPA, a client asked for a certain amount of money. I want to put in the maximum amount of money I can. And through cash balance, it was like, oh, you could put away, you know, based on the whatever, it was like $70,000, $80,000 for the owner. And then they said, oh, no, we want to put in a little bit less. But cash balance, especially working with a safe harbor plan, it's just, to me, it's an ideal situation for the employers that have the demographics and the money to pay for it. And I think that you do yourself a disservice and to yourself and to your clients if you bring them to a TPA who doesn't know anything about cash balance. You know, a lot of providers, 401k, 401k, 401k. It's kind of like the Greek restaurant in the SNL skit, you know, cheeseburger, you know, Pepsi, no Coke. And find somebody like EGPS that can do that. So that's my commercial. But I enjoy the presentation because it's always, you know, cash balance 316. It's always up my alley. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And EGPS will be with us in Kansas City and in Anaheim and Milwaukee. And like I said, go to that 401ksite.com to sign up for the Anaheim and KC events. And again, Amber, thank you so much. And again, I will say go to that 401ksite.com, talking about providers that will be with us. Kevin from PenChex. I've known Kevin forever. Well, not forever, but for a very, very long time, back when I was young, I think. But then people will say that I was never young. But he will give us a presentation on rollovers. To me, one of the great opportunities in the retirement plan space. I'm old enough to remember when we had missing participants, we would send off 100% of withholding to the government, which wasn't so nice. When people have a retirement, can't be located, but PenChex, that's one of those companies that is a great rollover solution for you as an advisor or as a TPA. Kevin, you there?
I'm here. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
All right. Let's see if we can do this. Can you see me? Can you see me now?
I'm about to. Yep, I see you.
Okay. There we go. Great. Yeah. Yeah, we have known each other a pretty long time, and it's such a small industry. I remember when I used to work for a TPA, and I would love doing plan design, and then I'd run around with your article about why you should not use your payroll provider and use a competent TPA instead. And one of my coworkers when I was at that TPA back in the aughts was Amber Waddell.
Yeah, well, it's always the nature of the business. It's so close knit. You know, you have this national business, and you run to people and like, oh, then it makes me feel old. I'm like, wow, I've been doing this for like ever. I remember when I was young once. So, but then again, my wife would say I was never young. So
Yeah. Well, and Amber worked on the East Coast and I was on the West Coast, and we actually met for the first time in real life last year after
that's
working
hilarious.
with each other for like 18 years.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let me see if you can see that. Can you,
I don't see that yet. I see you. Oh, now I see it.
is it the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, it's the full presentation. Great.
Yep.
There's also another thing here. I showed a breakout that allows me to control it. So what I wanted today to talk about today is a little known and little considered option in 401k plans called, the auto rollover IRA, de minimis distributions, force outs, cash outs, whatnot, and how we can use less is more. So now cashing out small balances. Regulations allow for you to cash out small balances of terminated participants. The participants have to be given written notification with at least 30 days to make an election on their own. Otherwise, it is moved out of the plan's trust. It can be as long as 60 days. When you're forcing people out, it's usually 30. Balances under $1,000 can be forced out as cash, but balances between 1,000 and 7,000 must be rolled into an IRA. And the IRAs, you can't put them in a target date fund. You can't map their elections. You've got to put them in something for capital preservation because the Department of Labor doesn't want these to be long-term investments. They want it to be a short-term spot until the participant claims their IRA. Now, where are we and how do we get here? So AGTRA in 2001 codified force outs. Prior to that, it was kind of willy-nilly and it allowed that. So that's what actually put it into law, and it set the balance at $5,000. Now, with Secure 2.0, 21 years later, they finally increased the balance for the first time from 5,000 to 7,000. Another thing with Secure 2.0 is it mandated auto enrollment for all new plans starting after 2023. We'll get to that in a little bit longer. And a third thing I want to talk about was the plan's audit requirement and what it takes for that and how you go about doing that. So why should you force people out and take advantage of this option? First off, it's the document people. The force out provision is an optional provision, but if it is selected, then it needs to be used. The document will say you will do this, not you may do this. So if it's selected, you have to do this on a regular basis. The Department of Labor hasn't said what a regular basis is. And again, the rollover amount has to be if anything with a vested account balance over $1,000 has to be rolled over. And currently the maximum 7. And this is vested account balance. Also, the plan document could determine whether or not you're looking at rollovers. A well-designed plan document, when you're working with a good TPA, will exclude rollovers from looking at that balance. So they could have $30,000 rolled in, a $10,000 account balance, and they're 40% vested. So their vested account balance is $6,000. That person can be forced out. Now the audit. So the Department of Labor requires plans of a certain size to be audited, and these audits must be performed by an independent firm, and the cost can be up to $10,000. It creates a big headache for the plan sponsor, small business owner, and all the other service providers. By cleaning out these small balances, you can actually avoid the audit because back in 2 years ago, next month, that Department of Labor changed the audit requirement. At one time, it said anybody with over 100 eligible participants had to take an audit regardless of account balance. And then in 2023, they actually changed that to anybody to account balances, not eligible. So if they have more than 100 account balances, the plan has to get the audit. And then cost $10,000, cost hours and hours and hours for your plan sponsor, your service providers. And one of the things the auditors now are looking for is whether or not the plan's using the force out provision, if it is. So we went over this before about the change in the audit requirement. And again, it's participants with an account balance. And that a definition of a participant is someone who is active and eligible in the plan, regardless of account balance, whether or not they have account balance. Also, terminated employees that continue to have an account balance in the plan are considered participants, and they would count towards that 100 life requirement. So if you keep up on forcing out your plan your small participants, you can avoid the audit. And in the last 2 years, I've helped quite a few plans save thousands and thousands of billable dollars, not added to the expense ratio, but billable dollars by having them clean up their plans. Another great reason to get your plan out of the audit is to kind of prospect proof your plans. And I believe we talked about this earlier in a different seminar. But if your plan has an audit, that information has become is public knowledge, and it's included with the 5500 that's available on eFast, Free ERISA, Larkspur, and all those different sites. So an audited plan probably contains an extra 30 pages of document about your clients that an advisor can use to go in and try to pull apart and sell. And there was a presentation on that yesterday too, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But if you avoid the audit, then the 5500 online is about 2 pages. It's a 5500 SF is what they call it. Now, pricing. Bigger isn't always better. People always tell me like, hey, I've got this plan. It's got this many, it's got $2 million. What pricing can I get? I'm like, well, how many participants are in the plan? If it's a 5-participant plan, that's a really good, or let's say a 10-participant plan with a $200,000 average account balance, that's really good. But if it's, 1,000 people, then the average account balance isn't so good. And I worked for Penchex. I've worked for Penchex Trust for almost 2 years now, but I've spent the majority of my time in record keeping and TPAs with record keeping. So average account balances, the terminated participants with the small balances will drag your average account balance down. Because remember, these people could have $50, $100, $800, $3,000, and that'll drag down the average account balance. Forcing out these balances can increase the average account balance of the entire plan and lower the fees. I worked with an advisor in Portland last year where he was actually able to charge less on the plan once we forced the participants out from him. It went to a different spot on his grid. And I know, working from my past that, a lot of it is record keeping is grid based on average account balance, because you have your set costs like your cybersecurity, call centers, thing like that, and then you have your per unit cost, and unit is a participant, and a lot of that is mailing, statement mailing. And Ari and I have been in this industry since the mid 90s. Back then, a stamp cost 32 cents. Now a stamp costs 68 cents, and I found that there's something in front of the Postmaster General to increase it to 75 cents a stamp. And you're like, that's not a lot, Kevin. But if you talk about it, if you think about it, with 4 mailings a year with statements and notices at the end of the year, that can be 6 mailings a year, and you multiply that by thousands or millions or tens of millions of participants, that really can add up. Plus the fact that printer ink, if it costs about $1,200 a gallon, black printer ink costs between $1,500 and $9,600 a gallon, but that's a lot of money. That's a lot of expense, especially when we're with fee compression in the industry and we're fighting tooth and nail over 1/10 of 1%. How are you mailing notices to people when you're charging when your record keeper is charging 20 basis points and they've got 500, a terminated participant has $500 and that will never grow. That's just unsustainable. So if you get these people out, you could really increase pricing from your plan, either as an advisor, as a record keeper, or you can avoid the audit. Now, another thing to talk about is unvested contributions and how to get the most out of that. As I said, the limits set by the Department of Labor are the vested account balances, 7,000, 1,000. That's what the vested is. That doesn't take into consideration any unvested employer contributions. Now, unless you're a safe harbor contribution, most employer contributions are subject to a vesting schedule. It could be a 3-year cliff, but most likely it's a 6-year graded vesting schedule. That means even though the employer gives the participant the money in their account, in their 401k, it's not fully theirs until they leave. 60, a 6-year graded is 20% for first, 40, 60, 80, 100, spread out over 6 years. So the unvested money could still belong to the plan. And it's right now, if you don't force these people out, it's locked in their accounts. But if you force people out, then what you're giving them is their vested account balance, which always includes their deferrals and whatever percentage of employer contributions they are out. So that could also free up thousands of dollars that can then be used to pay plan expenses, offset employer contributions, or be given to the active participants as an extra employer contribution. That all depends on your plan rules. So make sure you're working with a good TPA that designs the right plan that takes full advantage of the forfeiture account. Now, fiduciary liability. Former employees, they don't often update their address. I just found out last month, that my HSA account that's tied to my 401k, that even though my 401k provider updated my address, the HSA portion didn't. And I've moved over 2 years ago. I left the firm about 1.5 years ago. So these addresses just don't get updated. People get lost. And it's and then also all the notices, fee disclosure, safe harbor, the statements, they all have to be mailed out, regardless of the the participants' status with the plan, with the employer. The plan will be responsible. A former employee is still considered a participant and is still subject to the fiduciary, to being covered by the fiduciary duty of the plan. There's nothing to say that employment status has any effect on their being a participant. It actually doesn't. Now, uncashed checks. Now, so the force out rule says you can force out people under $1,000 by sending them a check. But guess what? You've already given them notice to take action and they haven't done it. So if you send them a check, that's most likely not going to be cashed. So what we suggest is rolling all your force outs into an IRA. That way, once the plan is in, once the account is in the IRA, it's out of the plan. An uncashed check per the Department of Labor is still considered a plan asset. And guess what? It's still that uncashed check counts towards the participant count of the DOL audit. And the DOL has been cracking down a lot over the last few years about making sure plan sponsors do their fiduciary duty of getting the money back in the participants' hands. And again, if as long as the check is uncashed or the account or the balance is still in the 401k, it is a participant. It is the fiduciary duty of that plan sponsor. How am I doing on time, Ari? I actually can't see my my watch on my computer with everything.
Still got about 15 minutes.
Okay, good. So again, the Department of Labor is focusing on reuniting people with their money, reuniting these participants with their money. And PenCheck's Trust has been in the IRA force out game. We processed our first force out in 1998, before it was even codified by AGRA in 2001. And we've worked on millions of IRAs over the years. And one of the things we did is we set up the National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits. It's the NRURB, to help connect people with their balances, to help us reunite these people with their account balances. Because a lot of people will view this process as a one-step process where you're just forcing the participants out of the plan into an IRA or sending out a check, and then it's done. At PenChex Trust, we believe this is a two-step process. The first step is to get the money out of the plan, and we'll help you do that. The second step is to reunite Americans with their money. And a lot of these people aren't, high net worth C-suite executives. They're the rank and file employees. And this, for them, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 could be a really big deal, especially, in January, coming off a big credit card bill with the holidays. So we do everything we can to help reunite people with their money. And it starts with the NRURB. Every account that we open, we register with the NRURB. This is a searchable online database that anybody can search for. And it also upholds the sponsor's fiduciary responsibility under the DOL Field Assistant Bulletin 2014 about, doing their due diligence to find missing participants. Now, we'll help you regardless of what you do. You are allowed to register terminated participants with unclaimed free of charge, regardless of their balance. This isn't forcing people out. So you can go through your plans and see who it is, whether or not they got a 30, 50, 60, $80,000 account balance. You're allowed free of charge to register them with the NRURB. And you and the plan sponsor will get a notification when the terminated participant has conducted a search, and will provide you the contact information that they enter in there. And that's completely it's that we tell the participant when they're searching that we're going to do that when we try to reconnect them with their money. Again, we won't have the money. When you register these participants, you'll just say, hey, your money's with John Hancock. Here's the contact information, or with Empower, here's the contact information. It's not us holding the money at the NRURB. It's just us trying to reunite Americans with their hard-earned retirement savings. Now, it's no cost to list or search. Participants can go online, Google missing retirement money, and if it's Chrome, we're the top search result. If for some reason, if it is Edge, we're the second search result. And I've also listed the address here that you can use to register your participants, and participants would go to search for. Now, another thing that we do at PenChex is we do participant search services. We offer this as a standalone product to help in our mission to reunite Americans with their hard-earned retirement savings. We've developed a very powerful in-house search engine, and it was so successful. Our TPA partners clamored for them to use it, just for other things, not just for the force outs. So we've made that available. Now, you can search for people that you need to make distributions to, including RMDs. By the way, if you have a terminated participant in your plan that's subject to RMDs, you can provide, regardless of the balance, you're allowed to force that person out. Again, you have to give them written notification. But if they don't make an election, regardless of their balance, with all the new RMD rules around Secure and Secure 2.0, you can say, hey, if you don't get your balance out, you're going to be rolled to an IRA. We can definitely help you with that too. And this goes into a little bit about our search technology, 82 billion records, over 10,000 sources. You'd upload your participants' data to our secure portal, and we do the rest. Usually we get you the search results same day. And we've got a high find rate. I think we find about 95% of the people we search for. One of the things is, can we get them to take action? That's what causes a lot of people not to take a distribution, but to instead, be inert and not make any choice. And I wanted to talk about that a little more. So We have a service called Premier Distributions. It's a turnkey service that allows us to take it entirely off your clients, your hands, and the record keeper's hands. What you would do is identify who needs to be forced out, transfer the balances over to pen checks, and we would keep that in a secure, stable fund for the next 30 days. We'd handle all the mailings and all the participant communication. The participants would interact with our call center that's based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where a trust company is incorporated, or East San Diego County, a town called La Mesa, where our corporate headquarters is. And automatically at the end of the time frame you or your TPA partner sets, any non-responders will immediately be opened up into an IRA. And this service will can cost nothing to you and your plan sponsor. I would say the vast majority of people that use our Premier Distribution and our IRA services have the fees charged to the participant's account, as long as it's available under the plan regulations. Some people say, we work with a lot of ESOPs, and a lot of the ESOPs, because everyone's an owner of the company, will absorb the cost, but the majority of 401k plans we work with don't. Defined benefit plans, cash balance plans, usually written in the document is that they can't pay these fees. So that's just borne by the plan sponsor. But with IRAs, I would say 95% of IRAs, there's no cost to the plan, your client or yourself. Now, automatic enrollment. So as I said earlier, automatic enrollment is now here to stay. All new plans started after 2023, I think as of this month, have auto enrollment and auto increase. You'll find no bigger fan for automatic enrollment than me. I left American Funds and started working for the TPA the month that PPA codified auto enrollment, and I've been a huge believer ever since. I really think that it's going to, help Americans save for life, save the income and make the income they need to provide income stream in retirement. If you make asset-based compensation, this is going to be great. The average participation rate of a non-auto enrolled plan, 60%. Average deferral rate will be 3%. Auto enrollment is 95% participation, and it is 6% deferrals going up to 10. So over time, that'll mean a much bigger asset base for anybody making asset-based compensation, like an advisor, a record keeper, or even DCIO. What it's also going to do is create a much larger base of non-engaged participants. So that's why you're going to need to help make sure that the force outs occur on a regular basis too. And, you can do it quarterly, semi-annually, annually. It's up to you. The document just says that you will do it if it's in there. Now, long-term part-time is another big thing coming on, where now employees that work more than 500 hours in 2 consecutive years are now eligible, and they are going to be subject to auto enrollment, but they can be excluded from certain employer contributions. And it's also going to be a much better need to make sure that you're on top of this and helping your clients force out their terminated participants that still have a vested account balance under $7,000. And those rules are live now. I think it's really going to be a game changer for people in the restaurant industry, golf courses, agriculture, things like that. But if you're dealing with professional corporations, it might not be as much of a game changer. Now, MyAmplify, this is our online portal that we built to help advisors, plan sponsors, TPAs, and record keepers go through the process. We have our SOC 1 and SOC 2. We have a high focus on cybersecurity. It's a great way to easily get this taken care of and keep you in the driver's seat. We're known for our customer service. If you look at our Google reviews, it's about 1.45%. And, so I've worked with or for TPAs for over 20 years. And if I get somewhere and I forget the address and I have to Google the TPA, a lot of times I'll see a really bad rating. And that's because participants don't realize that it's not the TPA keeping them from their money. They think that it is, and that's why they'll write a bad review on them. So let us be the bad guys. Let us take the calls. When I was TPA, I didn't like talking to the participants. I wanted to talk to advisors and plan sponsors, but they would eventually, some of them would get my number. So instead of that, instead of you guys being the distribution, handling the distributions, let us be your outsourced distribution provider. You know, we've handled about over 1,200 calls a month, 98% resolution achieved on first call. And another reason why I think it's really good to choose Penchex is we've come up with something we call Next Level IRA, and I didn't have a slide on this, but I wanted to talk about it a little bit. We found that the majority of the participants that claim their IRAs, and by the way, in the first 12 months, over 50% of our IRAs get back in the hands of their rightful owners, the person that saved that money, the person that money belongs to. By the end of the second year, it's closer to 70%. Actually, I think it's 68%. My former TPA self says I've got to use the real number. And we found that a lot of these people were cashing out their accounts because that was the easy button. They weren't working with a financial advisor because they were not highly compensated employees. They had a balance under $7,000. That wasn't very nice. That wasn't very attractive. And the easiest thing to do is them not opening up an IRA because they weren't sure what the Irish Republican Army had to do with their retirement savings anyway. Remember, these are mostly unsophisticated people. So we came up with Next Level IRA that allows them to easily move their money from the capital preservation required by the auto rollover rules with the Department of Labor to we have over 50 investment options, including a managed account option. And if they do it online, it literally would take them 4 clicks to keep from cashing out their balance and opening and instead saving for the long term. And what we actually also do is if they hit the cash out button, we say, hey, your account balance may be $2,000, but you're 22 years old. With a conservative rate of return, when you get 65, this money could be worth this much. Are you sure you want to do it? And then they might say no, and then it would go back and say, do you have an IRA? Yes. Click here. No. Set one up with Next Level, and then it's 3 steps from there for them to continue to save for the long term for their retirement. We wanted to help stop plan leakage that's going on, and that is a big concern. And that's kind of it. I think I might be a couple of minutes early. Ari, do we have any questions from the group?
You got multiple questions.
All right.
Number one, I mean, it's a 2-part, really. It's 2 questions, but why do smaller balances need to be forced out? I mean, that's an easy question.
Yeah, well, it could be the rule of the plan, and
It's the rule of the plan. Not everybody not everybody has an involuntary cash out rule.
right. Yeah, but if it's selected, it will be done, not may be done.
Yeah.
So as designed. Otherwise, it's a burdensome cost, and you're continuing to have the fiduciary liability of the participant.
Exactly.
And these don't go away. So in 2017, so my ex-wife's family moved from South Texas to LA County during the war. My ex-grandmother-in-law was a Rosie the Riveter, and she was covered under a defined benefit plan.
Right.
She passed away right before she turned 100 in 2015. We got a force out letter from her from this defined benefit plan for an aircraft manufacturer in the 1940s in 2017. So this money doesn't go away. So eventually you're going to have to either reunite with the people. All right. Next question.
What about with large balances? If they leave the employer, can they leave it as long as they choose? That's, again, if you're above that limit, right?
Yep. But if they're of the RMD age, whatever that is this year, depending on Secure 2.0, you can also force them out. But if they have $10,000, you can't. Exactly. Vested account balance with $10,000.
How do you deal with small Roth retirement plan accounts? Would they be rolled over to a Roth IRA or traditional IRA? As you probably know, under the current rule, Roth IRAs can't be rolled back into a retirement plan.
Yeah, we would roll that into a Roth IRA to keep the Roth characteristics of it, and while we'll then not be eligible to be rolled back into a plan, they can take it to another IRA.
Exactly. And what are your thoughts about auto portability?
So I've been in this business for 27 years, and in that time, right now, the auto portability, it's 5 record keepers. In that time, I've only worked for one company that is that use the 401k provider part of the auto portability. So auto portability, the portability service network would have done nothing for me over almost 3 decades. Meanwhile, Penchex is out there actively trying to reunite people with their money using our advanced search engine and the National Registry of Unclaimed Retirement Benefits. And I think we do a really good job of doing that. 68% get their money back in the first 2 years, 73% in the first 2.5 years.
Yeah, and that's it for the questions. To me, auto portability to me sounds like a much ado about nothing. I
Yeah.
just,
And let's say your plan does have auto portability and they auto roll the balance from the old plan into their new plan. And now all of a sudden this new plan has to take an audit because they got on that small balance.
I agree. Kevin, great. Thank you so much. Great as always.
No problem. All right. Thank you very much. And I will see you in Milwaukee.
In Milwaukee, no, Kansas City's first, and in
Oh,
Anaheim. I thought I was seeing you in
yeah.
Anaheim. I see you in.
Yeah, I'll see you in Anaheim.
Okay, perfect.
All right. I just read Bob Uecker's elegy yesterday. That's what.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just have to confirm with Milwaukee. We'll set up the date. It's going to be the Friday after Labor Day.
Okay.
My son worked it out, so I have to be in Detroit to see them play the Mets, and then I have to drive to Milwaukee. Yeah, I have my 19-year-old son. He schedules all the events. He's got to schedule events, and it's also close to when the Mets are in town. So I think I told you the Mets will be in LA like a day before our event. So that's how it works out. Speaking of LA, Brad Bartels, auditing is one of those things that I think that, in my opinion, people just don't understand the purpose of the audit, don't understand what the audit does and what it doesn't do. So, Brad, who's going to be with us in Anaheim, take it away.
Thanks, Ari. And good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. If it's afternoon for you, congratulations, you're almost to the weekend. If you're more on the West Coast where I am in Sacramento, you still got a little ways to go. But Kevin made some good comments about audit and how to get out of it. But if you can't get out of it, I'm going to share some of my thoughts on how you can help your plan, your client, your plan sponsor out with getting through the audit. Try to uncover some of the mysteries about it and some tips on how to help out your clients. And so I'm going to go into that, and hopefully I'm going to keep this pretty high level, not get into the weeds too much, but hopefully we can talk about just what are the audit requirements and why do your clients have them. A couple different types of audits, kind of a high level overview of the procedures, just so some of you who may be new to having a client with an audit understand what they're getting into, how to help them, and some tips on how to prepare for them. So we'll go through that, and here we go. So the audit requirements come from the Department of Labor, so we can thank them. They're the ones that come up with the plans that need an audit. Kevin mentioned a few minutes ago that it changed a little while ago. It's now account balances that trigger the audit. And generally, if your plan has 100 account balances on the first day of the plan year, that triggers the audit generally. But there is this 80-120 rule, which can be kind of confusing to some people. So I wanted to go through that here for a second. So really what it means is that if you have between 80 and 120 account balances on the first day of the plan year, the plan sponsor can elect to file the same type of Form 5500 that they filed in the prior year. And so that can keep you out of audit jail for a little while. So got a couple examples up here of what that means. So let's say you've got a plan and it's growing in account balances. It's got 50, then it's got 60, then it's got 70. January 1st, 2023, it's got 95 account balances. Doesn't need an audit. So you can still file that small Form 5500, no problem there. Now, let's say the next year on January 1st of 24, you've got 106 account balances. So you're over 100, but you're still between that 80 and 120. You haven't crossed over that 120 threshold. So the plan sponsor can elect to file, and there's no reason they would file the large form. They would still file the same form they filed in the prior year, the small form, and an audit is not required. And in this example, as long as that plan stays below 120, or actually it's 121 would trigger it, they can keep filing that small form in perpetuity. As soon as that plan hits 121 on the first day of the plan year, they're out of luck. They have to have an audit. So if we look in the next example, same example, 2023, that plan's got 95 account balances, no audit, no problem. January 1st, 2024, they've got 124 account balances. There's no more exceptions. That triggers the large form, and they've got to have that audit attached. So that's where that 8120 rule comes in. Now that the plan has gone over 120, now that 100 balance is in place. So let's say January 1st of 2025, they've come down to 108 account balances. They've, hired Kevin's company. They forced a few account balances out, but they're still over 100. Now that they're in audit world, every time they're over 100 on the first day of the year, they need to continue that audit until they go below 100 on the first day of the plan year. So that's where that 8120 rule comes into play. So now I want to get into a couple of types of audits, and a lot of people think that only types of audits are painful and more painful, or frustrating and more frustrating. Hopefully not. Hopefully, if you're working with a CPA firm that understands plan audits, they can get through your clients and get them through in the least painful way possible, I should say. There's really two types of audits related to a retirement plan. There's a full scope where we're auditing everything, the participant balances, the investments. But then there's what used to be known as the limited scope audit, and a couple of years ago that changed to a nice, easy name to pronounce now, an ERISA 103 A3C audit. It's still basically, for lack of a better term, a limited scope audit, just the name changed. And really what the difference is that in a full scope audit, we are auditing everything in the plan. We're auditing investments. We're auditing, we have to confirm the existence of investments, valuation, investment transactions. But in a 103 audit, we don't audit investments. So that's because we get a certification from either the custodian or the trustee, and that certification under the DOL standards says we don't have to audit investments because basically the custodian or the trustee is saying that all the investments are complete, all the investment activity is complete, so the plan sponsor can instruct the CPA firm to not do a full scope audit. So, what is this certification? What does it really mean if you're not familiar with it? So this is the official guidance from the Department of Labor, but the key words are underlined there is that it's the certified information is coming from an institution that's regulated, supervised, and subject to periodic regulation according to what the DOL standards are for this audit. So the types of entities that can issue a certification are a trust company, such as, Principal Trust Company, an insurance company, such as John Hancock Life Insurance Company, or a bank can issue certification. So Wells Fargo Bank, they can issue a certification. And these are examples of entities that are regularly regulated, supervised, and monitored according to the Department of Labor standards. So we also have to know who can't issue a certification. There's certain entities that seem like they can, but they can't. So broker dealers, they're regulated, but they're not regulated to what the Department of Labor standards are. So a broker dealer cannot issue a certification. Also, certain types of investment companies are not allowed to issue a certification. TPAs, third-party administrators, can't, and plan sponsors cannot issue a certification, which I think would be kind of obvious, but I've actually had plan sponsors who are going through an audit for the first time. We're educating them on the process. We tell them, hey, you need to get us the certification statement. And they ask us what that is. We explain what it is. And I've actually had a plan sponsor type up one and give it to me on their letterhead. And I'm kind of like, that's cute. But no, that's not quite what that is. So interesting. So, related to like broker dealers and investment companies, you got to know the legal entity that's issuing that certification. So Charles Schwab Investments cannot issue a certification, but Charles Schwab Bank can issue a certification. So you really got to make sure you understand the legal entity that's trying to issue the certification. Is it allowable under the Department of Labor standards? When we do a 103 audit, we do issue a slightly different opinion, and it's because we are not auditing investments. And since investments are 99% of a 401k plan's total assets, we can't say that we've really audited the plan and issue a typical unqualified opinion that a CPA firm issues. So the AICPA and the Department of Labor came up with a 3-page long opinion when we have these type of audits. It's got to be the most wordy opinion that I've ever seen. The attorneys had a great time coming up with this, but basically it's the CPA firm saying we've audited the plan under the 103 standards. We didn't audit investments, but we did everything else. So when you look at a 401k plan's financial statement, that is under a 103 audit, the audit opinion will put you to sleep. It's so long, but that's why we issue that long opinion. So what are the audit procedures? Let's just kind of get into the nuts and bolts here. So this is kind of where the magic happens. This is where we're doing everything that drives you and your clients crazy for a few days. These audit procedures and standards, so the AICPA and the Department of Labor, they're the ones that come up with the audit requirements. The Department of Labor lays them all out. The AICPA puts them into an audit guidebook for us. And so they've designed the audit procedures that they want us to look at for plans. The Department of Labor will actually periodically inspect CPA firms that do 401k and retirement plan audits to make sure that we're meeting what the Department of Labor standards are. My firm's been inspected a couple of times. Luckily, we've came through to their standards. Haven't had any follow-ups with them, but it is interesting when they follow up and want to see what we're doing. But it's also good to know because they want to make sure that we're taking care of plans and plan sponsors the right way. That's what we're charged to do. Make sure that plan sponsors are meeting their requirements to take care of their participants. So this is kind of a high-level flyover of what we're doing. I'm not going to go through these in a lot of detail, but we start with planning and understanding the plan. We look at some different reports. We do testing in different sections, and this is why we're driving you and your clients crazy, asking for information, because we got to see evidence that you're doing things to meet the standards. What my goal here is to help you understand a little bit better what we're going to be asking your clients about. So if you've got plans that have grown into that audit requirement, and they're going to need an audit this year, this spring or this summer we're coming up with, you can better prepare them and let them know, hey, the CPA firm that you engage is going to be asking you for a lot of information. Here's kind of a high-level overview of what they're going to be looking at, just to get them kind of ready for it, and also help you to be able to understand what an audit goes through if you've never been through it before, or maybe you're a grizzled veteran, you've got a lot of large plans, and you just enjoy a refresher on what we're looking for. When we start planning, we're gonna ask the plan sponsor for some key information. We're gonna want to see minutes from their plan oversight meetings. We want to know, are they meeting throughout the year to monitor the plan's activity? It's something the Department of Labor wants plan sponsors to do to make sure they're exercising their oversight of the plan and monitoring the plan. A lot of new plans that we get as a first-year audit client, they don't keep meeting minutes. And so this is really automatically an audit recommendation that we have at the end of the audit, that they meet regularly, that they document certain things they're looking at for the plan and monitoring it each year. So we're going to ask for this. If they don't have it, it's going to be an audit recommendation. We're going to ask about changes during the year. Were there any big plan amendments? Were there new companies added? Were there changes in eligibility or profit sharing? We want to know what changed during the year so we know we're looking at the right things. So a good recommendation for you is you're getting your clients ready for the audit season and they know they have an audit coming up. Ask them to already have this information ready, have the committee meeting minutes ready, have them put together a memo or a summary of significant plan changes that they can hand to their CPA firm right away. It'll really make the audit go smoother if the audit firm already knows this information in advance. One thing that came out a couple years ago is kind of the updated audit requirements under SAS 136. And so I think this 2024 audit season will be the third year under this standards, but I think plan sponsors are still getting adjusted to it because a lot of what these new audit standards did was take tasks and information that previously the CPA firm did automatically, and it put that responsibility on the plan sponsor. And so the plan sponsor is now required to document that they are doing these things as part of their plan oversight and fiduciary responsibility to the plan sponsors. Maintaining a current plan document. This is something that if the plan ever got audited by the Department of Labor, it's one of the first things they're going to ask the plan sponsor for is give me the plan document and all the amendments to it. So we need the plan sponsor to provide us evidence that they've got the current plan document and all the amendments. Verifying the financial statements are in accordance with plan provisions. So basically, this is the plan sponsor taking ownership of the financial statements before they're issued. So we provide a draft of the financial statements to the plan sponsor, and they need to give us documentation that they've reviewed it and understand it and authorize those financial statements to be finalized and issued. So it's a plan sponsor taking responsibility for the plan and the financial statements. Maintaining sufficient participant records. So we need to see evidence that the plan sponsor knows that the census is complete and accurate, that they've done procedures to make sure there's no double counted participants or missing participants from the census, that the payroll reports are accurate, that they're providing to us and to any other third parties that need the payroll records, that they're maintaining adequate participant statements and records for the plan and their payroll records. So we need to see evidence and documentation that they're doing that. Really, and this is a new one, that the plan sponsor has determined that doing a 103 audit is permissible. So previously, plan sponsor had nothing to do with that. It was just the auditor, and we got the certification, we ran with it. Now we need to have evidence that the plan sponsor has read that certification statement and can tell us with knowledge that, yes, you can do a 103 audit. Here's a valid certification statement. And then providing us with a substantially complete 5500 before the audit's done. That was generally already being done, but now it needs to be documented. Our firm, we've come up with a memo and a checklist that we provide to our plan sponsors that goes through these bullet points here, so they can just tell us what they've done, and we put it in as part of our audit file so we can show we're meeting those standards. I'd be happy to share that checklist with anybody. You can reach out to me after the presentation. I'd be happy to share that checklist with you if you think it would help out your clients who are audit clients. Then we start getting into doing some of the testing. One of the first things we do is, we want to test that the people who are in the plan are correctly in the plan, and the employees who are not in the plan are correctly excluded from the plan, either because they're not eligible or because they elected to not participate. So we're going to ask your plan sponsor for a sample of employees that we select. We're going to ask them for documentation that shows they're eligible. So if eligibility for the plan is 3 months of employment and age 21, we're going to ask for a driver's license or evidence of the birth dates and evidence of hire. And we're going to see, okay, based on this evidence, they should be eligible. And then look, are they in the plan? Yes. Or if they're not in the plan, did they elect to not be in the plan? Or if there's employees that we select who are not participating, we're going to make sure that they're correctly not in the plan. So pretty straightforward, just to make sure that they're eligible, not only for their own employee deferrals, but for the various types of employer contributions there might be. There could be different eligibility requirements for a matching, for a safe harbor, things like that, profit sharing. So we're going to look to make sure all the different eligibility requirements are being applied correctly. We're going to test contributions into the plan. So we're going to pick a sample of employees, and we're going to ask for evidence of the deferral rates they've elected and their wages, and we're going to recalculate that. And if we pick an employee and they have deferred 10% and their salary is $100,000, we're going to expect to see $10,000 that went into the plan, and hopefully we look in their account and $10,000 in fact went in there. One of the more common areas of audit issues that we find is actually in recalculation of the contributions, and it's due to the definition of compensation that the plan is using. We find more often than not that the plan document will say eligible compensation is all W-2 wages, but then the plan sponsor has excluded bonuses, or they've excluded a off-cycle payroll, or they've excluded a vacation payout. Well, that's all W-2 wages, according in my example, that should be the participant should be allowed to defer on. So then that runs into a whole bunch of other issues. Now that a participant has not deferred as much as they should have been allowed, this potentially impacts matching contributions or safe harbor contributions or things like that. And so plan sponsors really need to understand, what does their plan document say is the definition of eligible compensation, and is their plan operating in according to what that eligible compensation is. If they want to exclude bonuses, they need to amend the plan document to exclude bonuses or other types of compensation. So big audit area that maybe plan sponsors and their advisors should look at to make sure the plan's operating in accordance with definition of eligible compensation. Also for participant testing, we're going to test a sample of the investments they have, and are the participants being allocated a correct earning based on what the investment at the plan level or at the national level, what the rate of return is. We're also going to test the payroll system itself to make sure that if the participant is supposed to be earning $10 an hour, that they're getting paid $10 an hour based on a sample of time cards and earnings. One of the big other things we look at is the timeliness of the employer remitting the employee deferrals to the plan. The DOL regulations for a large plan is technically it's the 15th day of the business month following the month in which it was deferred. but in reality, it's as soon as administratively feasible. So if a plan sponsor has demonstrated they can remit that money to the custodian in 2 days, then that's kind of the bar that they've set, and they've got to always jump over that bar. And so typically for our audits, we request the plan sponsor to provide us with a schedule of pay dates and the date that they remitted the money to the custodian, and we're looking at trends in that. Are they remitting it consistently, or are there any dates that jump out at us? So if a plan sponsor's demonstrated they can do it in 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden we see a couple where it took them 10 days or 11 days, those are going to be late. And so we'll have a discussion with the plan sponsor about having to make corrective contributions to remit lost earnings and to correct that. We're going to test distributions from the plan. So money going out the door, big risk there. So we want to make sure that the people who are getting money from the plan have in fact requested that distribution. So we're going to look for a sample of distributions and make sure the employee and the participant has requested it. And did they get all the money they were supposed to get? So if an employee requested $100,000, did they have $100,000 in their account to get, or did they get less than $100,000? They didn't get what they wanted. We're going to test the vesting provisions. So if an employee was only 60% vested in employer contributions, did they get correctly 60%, or did they get too much or too little? So we're going to just test that to make sure. Really, those are the big things for distribution testing, that the employee get the right amount, were they eligible for it, and were they shortchanged on vesting calculations? So now that you've gotten a high-level flyer over the audit, how can you help your clients? So what are some tips to help you get them ready if they've been through an audit before? Have they not? One thing I always like to bring up is just remember that we're on your side. We're trying to help your clients. We're not an adversary. We want to be on the right team. It takes a village to take care of these plans. You need a good advisor. You need a good TPA. In some cases, you need a good attorney. And if the plan's large enough, you need a good CPA firm to help it out. We're trying to help your clients find issues now before the DOL comes knocking. So just remind your clients that we're there to help them. I'm on their side, not trying to be an adversary. Make sure the plan sponsor has a sense of urgency to get these audits done. If they're ready to go, we can be done, in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, a lot of plan sponsors don't put a priority on these, and they tend to drag out a lot longer than they can. So really, one of the key things that I say is make sure there is somebody who's the point person who's responsible for working with the audit firm. They're getting the audit request. They're setting up a timeline. They're the ones making sure that everything is getting to the auditor on time, and they're making sure that the auditor is then meeting their timelines and their due dates. When these happen, the audits go a lot smoother. So I really suggest putting this in play, having a plan sponsor have someone designated as the point person for the audit. Put together a calendar of key dates. Set the audit dates, set the dates that the information needs to get to the audit firm, set the dates for open items after field work, and the date the draft of the financial statement needs to go out. If there's a timeline, it holds everyone accountable and everyone responsible, goes way better and a lot smoother. I mentioned the census before. Under the SAS 136 requirements, the census report is something that we ask for. There's a lot of information we use in that for selecting samples. We need to make sure that census is complete. So we need to see that the plan sponsor has reconciled the wages on the census to the wages in the payroll summary reports that come out of whatever payroll system they use. This lets us know that the census is a complete population and we can move forward with the audit. If we get a census that doesn't reconcile between the payroll report and the census, we don't know what information is missing, and it can hold up the audit. So it's something really easy to be done ahead of time, and your audit firm will be, thank you for doing this. We know that we're good to go, and let's get this audit going. So something that can be done easily ahead of time. Some of this goes without saying, but have all those audit requests ready when the audit team arrives, whether they're doing it on site or the audit's being done virtual and all that electronic information has been loaded up on a share file or a ShareLink or something like that. I didn't really go into internal controls, but we're going to look at certain key internal controls as part of the audit. If your client has been through an audit before, they'll know what those are. Make sure they revisit those key internal controls to make sure nothing's changed or there's no deficiencies that they need to let the audit firm know about. Have your client look at those timeliness of the contributions ahead of time. Let them identify if there's been any potential late remittances that they need to discuss with the audit firm right when the audit starts. It's better to have those identified and discussed earlier than have it discovered on the back end and delay the completion of the audit. have those plan oversight meeting minutes documented and in place. And I didn't really touch on SOC 1 reports much, but make sure your plan sponsor is reviewing the SOC 1 reports for your key third-party providers. Typically, payroll and the custodian are issuing those SOC 1 reports. They need to review those as part of their plan oversight. And your audit firm should be asking about what your plan sponsor does to review those SOC reports and make sure that they're healthy and there's no issues in there that need to be considered. You give your client a good background of the audit process so they know what to expect if they've never been through an audit before. And, if anything, make sure that you have your client and help them pick an audit firm that's qualified to do these plan audits. They're very specialized, and there's a lot of really good qualified audit firms out there that do 401k audits. They'll do a really good job. They'll take care of your client, and they'll do it in a right way. So just like any other specialized industry, this is specialized. So take care of your clients and help them pick out a good audit firm. Thank you very much. There's my contact information there. You can take a little picture of it. It'll take a nice little picture of it on your phone. Be happy to answer questions that are out there, or you can reach out to me online. So, Ari, thanks for letting me share a few minutes of everyone's day. I'll give the screen back.
Not a problem. There was one question. Can you give example of internal controls, SOC 1 reports, and SAS 136?
So a SOC report, for example, so the payroll provider would typically be able to provide your client with a SOC report. And basically, it's another audit firm has tested the internal controls at the payroll provider, for example, for processing payroll. And since payroll is a big thing that gets money into a 401k plan, we want to know that your plan sponsor is getting that SOC report, reading it, and making sure that there's no control deficiencies or issues at their service provider that could potentially impact the operation of the 401k plan. So that's an example of a SOC report. For a retirement plan services, so for example, Principal's Retirement Services does a SOC report, and it's for the internal controls over processing retirement plan transactions. So money going in the plan, money going out of the plan, processing and valuing investments. So it's making sure your plan sponsor knows that the internal controls at their key service providers are solid and there's no issues that could impact your participants' account balances. And what was the other question, Ari, on SAS 136?
That was just it. Just
Okay.
what they were and all that. Yeah, I think it's a great, fascinating topic. I mean, the fact of the matter is that 26 years, I've gone through a lot of, I've seen a lot of stories. A lot of people go with auditors and they just base it on price, and I've seen a lot of auditors be declared deficient by the DOL. The DOL, the chief accountant over the last, I want to say 15 years, has really cleaned up and pushed out a lot of people who should not be doing audits because they're just deficient. And I know of a few that, I know one firm that was banned for life from ever doing DOL audits. I know somebody else in business who was told that he can no longer do any more audits because the amount of the number of audits and the manpower, just person power these days, it just didn't match. That there was clearly something deficient with that. So I think it's important that advisors and other plan providers understand that hiring an auditor such as you is going to avoid a lot of headaches. So that's really important. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'll be in Anaheim to see you all there. I'll share my contact information in the chat bar.
Not a problem. Appreciate it. Anyway, I want to have everybody again reach out to that401ksite.com. Anaheim is up on our list. Kansas City. We have a Kansas City guest in mind. We're just going to wait on confirmation. And $100. It's a 5-hour event. Lunch. Royals, great. Actually, this person actually never played for the Royals, but he's part of their broadcast team. And stadium tour and tickets for that night. I think they're playing the Red Sox. And Anaheim, it's a Thursday event, but we'll have Friday tickets for those who want to go and see them play the Seattle Mariners. Up next, Andrew Zito from Advis Partners. And And I think Andrew is going to talk about the current administration and what it could do for your 401k plan.
Right, everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Can everybody see that?
I can. You're starting to share the screen.
Good to go?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, everybody. Andrew Zito, Atlas Partners. I was here last year. Appreciate the opportunity. We do 401k consulting, advisory work, 338, complex plan matters, all that sort of stuff. We also have a pooled employer plan that we started about a year ago. Grown to about $150 or so million and growing. Got 3 or 4 new adopters going in every month, so it's been successful. If you have any questions on that, hit me up in the chat, or we could talk about that later. To be quite honest, I'm a little bit tired of talking about pets, and I'm definitely tired of talking about Secure 2.0. So I decided this time around to take a different tack and talk about what I think the new administration is going to mean for our world. And the qualified plan space and the larger retirement planning space in general. None of this is intended to be political, so if I make any sort of quippy comments, I am as straight down the middle of the aisle as you can be. So please excuse me if I say something that you find offensive. I'm not trying to get canceled this afternoon. Okay, so obviously the Trump administration has come in guns a-blazing and intends to get some things done. They've made some promises that are outright that we know and that we understand. And then there are some things that, we're kind of reading between the lines, inferring what we think he's going to do and what we think the administration will do based on their principles and what they did the first time around. I think one of the good things about this is there is a bit of a known quantity here, but at the same time, we are talking about the Trump administration. And so that's always an unknown quantity, right? So when we look at sort of the legislative potential here, the sky is the limit, literally, and we can expect the unexpected. So I've tried to rank these in order of the things I think are going to definitely occur, down to the things I think could occur. But again, this is based on lots of research, conversations with Washington folks, just really trying to get a beat on what's happening. The only thing I can probably tell you with some certainty is that some things will change and some things will be broken along the way, and we'll see if that's good or bad as we go. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please at any point in time stop, ask a question. I'm happy to engage on that. Okay, first one I think we can pretty much say is, also, if you've never been attended one of my sessions before, I'm big into memes. I try and hit both the older crowd like me and also the younger crowd who learn from memes. So I do include them a lot. So I think the first one that we can pretty much safely assume is dead upon arrival. Is the ESG conversation, right? So the question at issue for those not up on this topic is, can plan sponsors in their fiduciary obligations, in the fulfillment of their fiduciary obligations when selecting funds, can they consider environmental, social, and governance factors as, key factors in selecting the investment options? Can they consider them or not? That's been the question that's been around. The law as it sits right now does not specifically say they can. There's a large push even outside of the 401k space to be able to include these factors. From a political perspective, obviously conservative regimes tend to not favor ESG investments and factors, and liberal regimes tend to favor them. So as you can expect, this has been a bit of a tennis match going back and forth. The policy during the first Trump administration was that these factors should not be considered. And what that practically means is that if you consider these factors when selecting a fund, you could potentially be breaching your fiduciary liability or responsibility to the participants, right? And so it's a big deal because plan sponsors have to follow that, and if they don't, and advisors much the same have to follow that. And so without clear guidance on whether we can consider these factors, then we sort of have to take the conservative position that we shouldn't consider these factors. During the Biden administration, the DOL, not surprisingly, issued rules that kind of removed those ESG barriers and said, yeah, sure, you can consider these factors in selecting your funds, which effectively, again, gave sponsors and advisors the green light to start including these funds. Now, I think any advisor worth their weight in salt would probably not have, tilted toward a full ESG lineup, right? I think the guidance even back when it was allowed was that, you kind of pepper in these ESG funds and give them ESG and non-ESG funds, because as Americans, we can't agree on anything these days. So you have to give participants both choices. You potentially step on a landmine there. And so, I think I've only had one prospective client that I refused to work with because they wanted a full ESG lineup and I wouldn't do it. And then I had one client that proposed a full ESG lineup and I talked them out of it. And I actually got a text from her right after the election saying, thank you for avoiding this landmine for us. So, unfortunately, as soon as the Biden administration put this rule out, it immediately hit a brick wall of opposition from Republicans. And there were lawsuits filed in, I don't know how many different states. Here in Florida, it absolutely was a non-starter. I think there was actually even a law that was passed that prevented it from being a thing. And so it really faced this very muddy regulatory and judicial path forward, right? And it just basically got tied down. The Trump administration has not specifically issued an executive order repealing the Biden era policies. They have issued executive orders around every other three-letter acronym. The one we're talking about this week is DEI. But they haven't, specifically targeted that DOL rule that said that you could consider these. However, again, reading the tea leaves, I think we can expect that ESG will be a fiduciary minefield and will not share support from this administration. And I think we can pretty much assume that we're at the crossroads for ESG. I will say adoption among ESG funds inside of 401k plans during the Biden administration, even when it was allowed, was pretty tepid. The data that we have suggests that it wasn't a hugely adopted asset class or type of investment, but I think we can consider to see, we'll continue to see that way. And the interesting part is we say ESG like it's a binary switch, and it isn't. All mutual funds have some level of ESG rating because all organizations and companies have some ESG rating. The question is where you draw that line for which level of ESG rating are you willing to accept and include in the selection of your funds. Overall, pretty much sure that ESG is dead for the foreseeable future as a factor in considering funds for qualified retirement plans. So that's one. The next one I think that we can safely consider is dead. I couldn't find a meme for this one. Not safely dead, actually is coming back to life. It's private investments inside of 401k plans. So the DC space has got like $11 trillion or so of assets in it, which makes it a huge target for pretty much any product, financial product or instrument or insurance product or instrument that is out there. Many have tried and want access to the defined contribution space. The private equity, alternative investments, those types of things, they have always shared comfortably and successfully in defined benefit plans, right? They have been used in defined benefit plans as diversifiers, as hedges, as ways to blunt the impact or to offset the impact of the equity markets. But they have not, found their way into DC plans. And the reason for that is that there's participant direction in the DC plans in the 403B and the 401k world. And there's just simply not enough acumen among DC investors to make these types of investment options safe. And so they really haven't found their way in. During the first Trump administration, the DOL published a letter saying that it could have a place in 401k plans, but it was a bit of a crawl up toward approval of it. It wasn't a full out endorsement of putting them in. The arguments against putting these types of investment options into 401k plans are primarily one, the investment acumen that we talked about a minute ago, which is just plan participants don't necessarily have the investment knowledge to use these instruments, properly. I always think of my mother. She's a registered nurse, so she is, she's educated. She can put you back together if you break something. And yet, if I asked her to, properly allocate out to, a diversifying asset class like alternatives, she would shut down, blue screen of death, and that would be that. So there's just not enough education out there right now for these types of. We can't get participants to allocate between the equity and the fixed income market, so let alone drag on another asset class in there. That can be a little volatile and can be to the second criticism of this asset class, illiquid, right? So these private investments do tend to not be frequently traded, publicly traded securities. So that can create all sorts of problems with record keeping and liquidity and all that sort of stuff. Now, the financial world is talented enough and motivated enough to come up with ways around that. There are ways to unitize these funds and do all that sort of stuff, and create ways to sort of artificially manufacture that liquidity. And I suspect strongly that those ways have been already piloted and ready to fly. And so what we really need is to get the regulatory kind of approval to slide these things in. There are a couple of major private, alternative investment private equity companies in the US, and they now share an ally in the White House. And so we suspect that in this sort of overarching era of deregulation, that we'll see private equity investments and private investments of all types find their way into 401k plans. So it isn't necessarily a bad thing. We will need to do a significant amount of education. There will need to be limits on what we can put these things in. It may well be that these plans, these types of investments, make their way into more closely held 401k plans, self-directed brokerage accounts, that types of thing. As opposed to in the large mainstream, participant directed 401k plans. I think that there's not much appetite to, have a private equity investment from a nurse who's making $75,000 a year. They are looking for money from, executives and other folks who have a large portion, doctors specifically, who have large portions of their savings tied up in these DC plans. So I think that that's ultimately the market that they're going after. How we do that without discriminating is something that the market will have to figure out as we go. So that's number two. The next one, this one panics me a little bit, but it feels like an inevitability, and that's crypto. And I use crypto as a pretty much an overarching for both cryptocurrencies and digital assets of any variety. The meme here is not 100% applicable, but one of the things that really kind of made me realize is the volatility of these different cryptocurrencies and all that is one of the major reasons that they are kind of dangerous to put inside these K plans. So for the same reason that private equity wants access to the DC space, crypto has always wanted access to the DC space. And unlike the private equity markets, in which the private equity markets trying to get into the K plans, but the K plans not realizing that they want access to this, all the hype around crypto has really made the demand for crypto high inside these 401k plans. I mean, I hear about it pretty frequently because, you got crypto bros out there with their Mercedes and their Rolexes and all that sort of stuff. And the average 401k guy is going, or the average employee is going, I've got all my money tied up in 401k and I can't get to crypto, right? And so there is a demand, unlike the private equity side, for this crypto stuff. In 2022, Fidelity announced that they were ready to put crypto inside 401k plans. And that was met immediately with a response from the Department of Labor going, I dare you. Go ahead and try and see how quickly we come up in there and give you a colonoscopy for even attempting that nonsense. And so it kind of fizzled a little bit. And then we had Sam Bankman, who pulled his stunt. And so the crypto in 401k plans conversation really kind of trailed off, right? But now we have a president that has his own cryptocurrency. And so, and has sort of completely shifted and 180'd on his opinion of cryptocurrency. His first administration, he was not very supportive of it, but now he's signaling that he is. And so we suspect this is not just necessarily an outlined policy item, but again, reading between the lines, we suspect that the conversation of unlocking some DC assets for cryptocurrencies will come back to life. For me, this one is terrifying. I have worked with plan participants and plan sponsors for 20 years now, and I know the challenges that plan sponsors go through, the fiduciary risks that they face. And I know how, and I'm going to just say this gently, but I'm going to say it directly, so because I don't have a gentle bone, I know how dumb participants can be. I've seen participants throw their life savings away in self-directed brokerage accounts, and the unregulated nature of cryptocurrency really panics me when we talk about adding it to 401k plans. It is almost impossible to conjure in my brain a way that a plan sponsor could document a prudent process for selecting a cryptocurrency out of the ones that are there, simply because there isn't a ton of documentation around it or regulation or data for that matter, right? And so this one to me represents, I don't want to say an existential threat because that's a little bit dramatic, but it does bear a lot of talking, and I genuinely hope that the industry comes around and says, okay, if we're going to embrace this, we have to embrace this properly. And you know, Fidelity, to their credit, they did have a pretty good process in place to limit down the amount of exposure and the different, limiting the different risk factors for cryptocurrency, some of the volatility issues and some of the, you know, you hear the story of the guy that lost his password and it's on a hard drive and he's been searching a dump for like 20 years because he got $17 billion worth of cryptocurrency. Like, how do we make sure that we can maintain custody of an asset that's intended to not be custody, right? Because you know, there are issues from an ERISA perspective that we have to follow. So for me, I'm still hard out on cryptocurrency inside 401k plans. I will tell my sponsors that if they ask, but I do think we're going to be having a conversation about that going forward. Next one, guaranteed, and this is definitely a tennis match, the fiduciary rule revisit number 300. So the fiduciary rule, obviously, most of the folks on this call know what that is. It's essentially a rule aimed, and I say the rule because it's had like 14 forms now, aimed at protecting retirement plan participants and retirement savings from predatory advisory practices, rollovers into huge loaded funds and the like. The fiduciary rule basically in its basic form requires advisors to act in the best interest of their participants and hold them to a fiduciary standard as opposed to the best, the suitability standard, which a lot of brokers are you know, obligated to. Trump 2.0 is widely expected to have that sort of relaxed regulatory environment. And so we do expect a little bit of a relaxed regulatory environment toward the fiduciary rule. The twisted history of the rule is on screen. You know, back in 2016, it started with the Obama rule, which required best interest. And then that rule was vacated in 2018. In 2019, the Trump administration kind of pushed out a lukewarm version of the fiduciary rule, which the Biden administration, when they took over, said that they would keep, but that they wouldn't, you know, they would continue to look at. And then later in the year, they came out with the proposed new fiduciary rule, which went in effect recently. But the Trump administration has already signaled that they will not be enforcing that rule, which essentially brings us back to the original rule. We don't know if the Trump administration intends on issuing a new rule or what, but on behalf of all advisors everywhere, just give us something to work with so we know what standard we're supposed to follow. You know, this is one of those areas for me that, because of the back and forth, unlike the ESG situation in which, well, I should say like the ESG situation in which plan sponsors have to kind of err on the, or advisors have to err on the side of conservatism. I think the same theory sort of applies here, right? If you're an advisor, why wouldn't you follow the best interest of your clients at this point in time, knowing full well that there is this sort of like oddball, regime of rules on the fiduciary thing. Let's not forget the rules do, govern behavior, but the courts still also govern behavior. And so I'm just waiting for a situation in which, there's a case that involves somebody who should have potentially been following one of these rules and didn't, and see where that sort of lands. So, from our perspective, the fiduciary rule is probably getting a new remodel, which will be the 300th time we've done this, and will affect kind of how we do what we do. So that's I don't know if we're on the fourth one or fifth one, I forget. All right, so this one's got to happen. One of the things that the Trump administration and Congress and their control of Congress has indicated is that we're going to be talking about tax reform. They definitely want to extend, if not deepen, the tax cuts that the first Trump administration put into place. So we know those expire at the end of this year. So we know we'll be looking at some sort of tax package. Anytime we go near the tax code, it's always a free-for-all in terms of what we're going to be looking at, right? Last time 401k plans actually survived pretty unscathed, and we expect them to have some minor changes this time around. So if you zoom out of the whole policy conversation to its macro levels, the Trump administration is all about privatization. They are vocal critics of Social Security, which is essentially the public retirement plan system that we have right now. So on a principled level, you don't see a Republican Congress and a conservative president pushing us into a public retirement plan system. That's Democratic mantra right there. But so you suspect that the 401k system survives that. But at the same time, they are very much in a deficit cutting mode. And Elon and company will not be able to cut their way to clearing up the deficit and new tax cuts, right? So at some point in time, something will have to give. And unfortunately, while we think of 401k plans as a benefit and as a positive way for us to save, I'll never forget the time I was sitting in a conference with one of the senators on the appropriations of it was either a senator or a House member, I don't remember, but it was somebody in Congress at the time, and he's like, 401k plans are expensive. And we thought he meant fees wise, and what he meant was to the federal government, 401k plans are expensive. And that's because obviously there's revenue lost on all the tax deferred money that's contributed and the tax deferred growth. So Congress very much looks at this like an expense. 401k plans are an expense. And as they look for ways to raise revenue, we think that they found one, and I've been saying this since the Secure Act of 2022. We think they've unlocked Pandora's box, and in the Secure Act of 22, they made Roth, they Rothified, or they mandated that catch-up contributions for those over $155 be made on a Roth basis. I think that's a little bit of unlocking the door to Congress realizing that Rothification of contributions is a way to raise revenue. And it's, in fairness to Congress, it is actually a really good way to raise revenue because plan participants continue to get to be able to defer and save. They get that tax deferred growth, the money grows without paying capital gains taxes, and then they don't have to pay the taxes on the way out. So it isn't like they've lost all of the benefits of a 401k plan and a defined contribution plan, but they have lost that initial tax deferment, and that will have some impact. But the amount of revenue that can be raised is pretty significant, and so I think it's just too obvious of a solution, and I think Congress now has that taste of being able to raise money through Rothification on their lips, and I just can't see a way they get through this tax package without Rothifying something. And that can be a list to figure out. We could take the requirement to do catch-ups for all over 155 as a Roth. We can extend that to all deferrals. So if you make over $155, your deferrals have to be Roths from top to bottom. You can't do it any other way. We could see a modified limit structure where they take the 23 down to 10 on a pre-tax basis, and then anything over 10 up to 23 has to be on a Roth basis, right? They could Rothify require employer contributions to be contributed on a Roth basis. There's a massive revenue opportunity right there. Will that, anger employees? 100%. But, we're all going to have to get our way out of this somehow. And this is a way for Congress to raise money while continuing to support the private retirement system. For me personally, I've been saying this for 2 years. I don't see a way this happens without ratification of something. What? We're going to find out. I honestly think Congress would be mistaken if they didn't do it. As much as I don't want to have to tell plan sponsors that we have to change the rules on their participants. Do I think the impact would be significant? I think you'll see some folks who will cut their contributions down, but I think when you have to educate through that and say, listen, here's the deal. This is why we're doing this. You're just prepaying your own taxes. Don't worry about it. I think that's going to be on the advisor community to get out there. So moving down the line, this is my wrap up slide, and I'm right on time here. Look, Woody, everything is going to change. As we talk about tax reform and all that sort of stuff, he's talking about no taxes on Social Security income. How are we paying for that? We're paying it for Rothification. This is coming out of one pocket, going into another, folks. That's what this is. But when we start to tinker with all the different levers that can go into retirement planning, we start to change the game a little bit, and we're all going to have to be on our A game and help our plan participants plan for a different retirement. No taxes on tip income. If you work with restaurants, this is going to alter your restaurant plans. Changes to Social Security benefits. They start, messing around with that age and all that stuff. It's going to alter the formula that participants use to determine how they're going to retire. We could be looking at continued changes to withdrawal rules and limits. Those would also alter, the complex or the complexion of the plans that are out there. One thing I think we're probably going to see is some change to the corporate taxes, right? And so they've long talked about making, in the last tax debate, they talked about making employer contributions not tax deductible to the organization. And if you think about that for a moment, you have companies who are making huge match contributions and they're not paying taxes on that money. And then that's going into 401k plans, and they are not receiving tax dollars on that side. They are not receiving tax dollars on the growth of that money, and then they are receiving the tax dollars when it comes out 20, 40 years from now. That is a huge revenue opportunity for the federal government, and I would be stunned if it didn't come to pass in this tax bill that some of those things were closed. I don't know which ones yet, but something will break because they have to pay for some of these other things. One thing I've heard floating around from insiders is that non-qualified plans could be cut. This is one that I think will face some headwinds if it comes around, but the revenue opportunity here isn't huge, but it is there. I'm kind of a little bit dubious on whether this one gets pulled or not. We'll find out. Then we have some of these macroeconomic factors, right? So like tariffs and healthcare costs, right? If those things continue to go up, they are going to again change that retirement planning equation. So those are things that I think are not directly related to the DC space, but that could have an impact on our industry in general. The only thing I can promise you is that something is going to change and something is going to break, and that we all are going to have a fun 4 years, and we'll see how it all shakes out. But these are my basic ideas about what's going to change. I'll take any questions if there are any. If not,
there is one. Do you think that Trump failing to issue an executive order on ESG yet might have to do with the fact that Tesla is considered to be a strong ESG business? And if so, do you think that will shape future policy decisions?
No, I actually do not, because there's no, if you look at ESG's Tesla's investor pool, Elon Musk is out there saying, I never encourage people to invest in Tesla. We have enough, investors in Tesla. ESG isn't going away. ESG is just basically understanding how a company applies their governance practices on an environmental, social, and governance basis. Companies have always had, quote, ESG. What we're discussing is whether or not ESG should be included in the decision-making for selecting funds at a fiduciary level. And I do not think that Tesla's weight is enough to say, oh, just because they're an environmentally sensitive company, that they are going to move that ESG needle. The headwind against ESG is a much stronger headwind than I think even Elon Musk can fight, my opinion, of course.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew, as always.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. This is part of the show.
I don't know how to stop sharing here. There we
I'm
go.
going to start mine. Okay, I think do people see this? Do people see my screen? Oh, if you guys don't, then you guys don't. But
Yep, I see it, Ari.
perfect. I'll talk a little bit about what Andrew just previously talked about, because it's deja vu all over again. And if anybody knows, that's a phrase from Yogi Berra. He was obviously a Yankee great, Mets manager from 72 to 75. And I think a lot of people blame him for, I think he pitched Seaver in game 6 when he should have saved Seaver for game 7 and started George Stone, and they lost 7 games to the Oakland A's. But these are my opinions, or opinions are opinions. They aren't wrong unless based on incorrect facts, such as most of the discussions on my community Facebook groups where I live. Opinions are based on experiences. And of course, everybody knows that Curb Your Enthusiasm is one of my favorite shows of all time. Larry David says what we feel, except when he's a hypocrite. I do that a lot now on LinkedIn when I'm getting these invitations of people that you are just inviting you to join with them on LinkedIn just because they want to sell you something. It's always going to be somebody who's going to sell me leads, or someone who's going to manage, other attorneys, or who has no idea what I do for a living. You always get that little LinkedIn invitation. Oh, I see what you're doing really well in the legal community. The guy has absolutely no idea I'm doing, and I don't even I'm like Larry. I'm not gonna LinkedIn. I don't want to be friends with these people. It's just you're gonna sell me something. I just right now I got this woman LinkedIn with me, asked me for local courses, golf courses, and then obviously it segues into her trying to sell me, health and fitness tips. Well, I got a pretty good cholesterol score. Lost like 5-6 pounds. Leave me alone. But anyway, it's deja vu all over again. Trump is back in office. Grover Cleveland was the only other person to be elected to non-consecutive terms. If you know your history, Grover Cleveland's daughter is got the name. They named the Baby Ruth candy bar after her. And that's really about all I know about Grover Cleveland. That, and there's a rest stop for him on the Jersey Turnpike, even though he was a New York governor. I think silver standard and all that stuff, and tariffs, and Benjamin Harrison was the president in between. Trump obviously is a political wild card. Some things we can predict, some things we can guess, some things will catch us by surprise. Again, it's deja vu all over again. We've seen this before. The fiduciary rule, like Andrew said, it's been a never-ending process. More than half of my career has been not spent, but there's been time talking about, fixing the fiduciary rule. Fiduciary rule is the same one that came into effect in 1976 when we had defined benefit plans, when we really didn't have mutual funds being as investments. No 401k plans existed, no participant direction. So therefore, we really need to have a new fiduciary rule. And politics is an interesting game. It takes years and years for the Department of Labor to formulate a new rule. And they tried it. The Obama White House tried it. And then, you have court battles. You have time to put into the rule. And then a political campaign changes everything. Like I said yesterday, I was hired by a well-known insurance company to help them navigate the rule change in 2016. And as soon as Trump was elected, that was the end of my assignment. Lisa Gomez is out of EBSA. I will throw her name out there because I did work at a law firm where she was a partner. Didn't have much interaction with her, but for the 10 months that I was there, the only thing positive I can say about the place is Lisa Gomez. There's no EBSA leader yet. We assume the Trump administration will try again. The problem, obviously, is Trump. Trump is, people will argue with me, but he's already a lame duck. He can't be reelected. They're not going to amend the Constitution so quickly to allow him to have a third term. So his new EBSA leader, whoever that will be, there'll be a new president. That could be a Democrat. Will change everything. So if they're going to put out a rule, they should do it as soon as possible. I'm not a betting person, but there are certain things I will bet on. I have a Caesars app where they gave me $300. I want to say about 3 or 4 years ago. I still have not gone through the money because I don't like to bet. But I will bet that the ESG rule will be overturned. People use the term woke. I kind of hate that. If you ever, Google what the term woke is, if you understand what it's to be, if you're saying you're anti-woke, you come off sounding like a racist, in my opinion. But the ESG rule, to me, always went against the DOL thinking on investments. To me, it's all about maximum return. And I think ESG strays from that. American Airlines just got sued recently. They were, ESG policies, whatever, they were held to be liable on a duty of loyalty, but not a duty of prudence. I think that case is going to get appealed. The ESG rule, right out of the park, it wasn't overturned. I think because there's no EPSA head. We have a interim DOL secretary, but we'll see what happens. But I think we will have some new tax legislation. There's a short time before the 2024 elections. Right now, you have two houses of Congress that are Republican. Obviously, in the House, it's such a small change between Republicans and Democrats, a switch about 3 or 4 seats. And you have Hakeem Jeffries, who went to my high school. He was 2 years ahead of me. He would be the next Speaker of the House. So we'll see what happens in the next year and a half or whatnot. Automatic enrollment and requirements in LTPT. We've had LTPT for the second year now. I love increasing retirement coverage. What I don't love is that it causes lots of errors. You haven't seen a lot of the errors, but you will see them very, very soon. I think it's going to be the fault of TPAs who weren't ready for it, and mainly 401k plan sponsors that will never be ready for it. I think you'll have a lot of LTPT that the TPA doesn't really know about. I think that you're going to have a lot of QNECs and a lot of situations where there's going to be corrective contributions that are going to have to be made, and employers are going to have to, they're not going to write checks, but they're going to deposit money for missed deferral opportunities, especially on the LTPT side. I hate to see it, but it's inevitable. And again, there's always a cost to these provisions. Again, I love them because it increases retirement plan coverage, but I guess I should love them as a risk attorney because they're going to increase plan errors. But, quite honestly, as an attorney who worked for TPAs, I like to see less errors. Crypto, again, like Andrew said, I think they're inevitable. Spot Bitcoin ETFs are a game changer for the 401k plans because it really eliminated the need for that crypto wallet. Andrew talked about somebody missing a password and can't get into the crypto wallet. Obviously, crypto wallets, talked about it yesterday. Access could be hacked easily. But of course, with crypto, timing is everything. And obviously, when crypto right now, it's like $104,000, $105,000. People want it. Timing is everything. When Fidelity and First put that crypto window up a couple years ago, they probably were developing the idea when it was $65,000. Came to market when Bitcoin was 20-something $1,000. Trump was a champion for crypto as a candidate. We will see if he will be as a champion as the president. I assume the DOL will allow it at some point. There'll probably be restrictions. Andrew's right. The idea that participants having access to it is kind of scary. I always talk about the participant that I work with at a certain Long Island law firm who professed to me that he put in all his money with a mid-cap mutual fund because he insisted that a mid-cap was the middle of the market. And so therefore, it would be correct to put in 100% of his money in a mid-cap fund, not understanding what a mid-cap fund actually is. The 2026 catch-up for HCEs, the Rothification for it, the industry pushed back on it loud and clear, especially payroll providers. I don't like it. Maybe I don't like it because my wife's going to be caught up in this, but mainly I don't like it because for twofold, it will decrease people partaking in catch-ups, but also if plans don't have a Roth feature, and they won't put in a Roth feature, then these people who will get caught up in this Rothification class because they're HCEs won't be allowed to put in catch-ups. And again, according to the guidance, if you have a current election as pre-tax, once you hit that HCE limit and you have catch-ups, therefore they can treat your election as a Roth election for catch-ups. I'm hoping new tax legislation kills this. We'll see what happens. Probably not. Another hot mess, the catch-up contributions for those who attain age 60, 61, 62, or 63 during the plan year. Security 2.0 allowed it, that we would give people 150% of their catch-up that they could put in if they were age 60, 61, 62, or 63 during the tax year. Why is this a hot mess? I think administrators will screw it up for those age before 60 and after 63. To me, it doesn't make any sense. You would cut off this access to people who are older than 63. Because, a lot of people these days, they're working until 70 or 72. Why cut it off for them? They should get that increase as well. But again, everything, what is developed in tax legislation is developed in Congress, people who are not in the industry. So again, it's going to create another hot mess. Forfeiture lawsuits, one of my favorite topics. I always talked about it yesterday again. Donnie Brasco lawyers who looked at hitting parking meters for quarters. I always love that scene. The nature of class action lawyers is they put out this money, they front the lawsuit, they hope to get it back as part of a settlement. On the back end, if these cases get thrown out, they lose all this money. Firms lost their shirts in those BlackRock TDF lawsuits, and quite honestly, they deserved it. It was a bad idea. So now they're focusing on forfeitures. The problem with this, again, you say, wow, maybe that's a great idea. I never thought about employers using forfeitures as, using it to offset employer contributions as some sort of prohibited transaction. I never thought about it, and neither did the Department of Labor think about it. The Department of Labor is pretty good on prohibited transactions and, seeing issues with plan sponsors doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And, it's more, to me, for the small and mid-sized firms, really more concentrated that they should really focus using forfeitures to pay administrative expenses and then reallocating or reducing employer contributions. Always pay administrative expenses if you can. Look to the language, may or shall. Those are very, very, interesting dilemmas. Drafting it can lead a plan sponsor in trouble. And if it shall, and you're not using it shall to pay expenses, then you got some issues. But overall, these cases are getting thrown out as they should be. VCP self-correction. This is something I like. Department of Labor, when you're dealing with late salary deferrals, and you had to file the VFCP application, the dual agents were very, very onerous in what they ask a plan sponsor. And to me, self-correction is very, very frequent. I always say this, salary deferral contributions, plan sponsors never late once. They're late multiple times. So DOL offices are getting tired of applications. I'm kind of getting tired of applications, even though I charge for them. For self, correction, the plan and plan sponsor can't be under investigation by EBSA. Lost earnings can't be more than $1,000. Delinquent participant contributions or loan repayments must be remitted to plan within 180 calendar days from the date of withholding. And it's got to include the principal amounts as well as any associated lost earnings. And you just file a notice with the Department of Labor that you self-corrected it. And I like it. We'll see what happens if the DOL will further pursue plan sponsors that, that are aware of the self-correction. But remember, they're answering under penalties of perjury on Form 5500 if they've had late deferral deposits. And if they don't notice one of these notices, Department of Labor, they may audit a plan. Other points to consider, after-tax employer contributions, where plans will have the opportunity to allow participants to get their employer contributions on an after-tax basis. This will be as popular as 8-track tapes in 2025, which, again, for some reason, records are selling more than CDs, and I don't know why. Record player, I don't even know, it's 2025 and I grew up in the 70s. I don't even know how to operate a record player. And for what I remember, record players you could scratch, but 8-track tapes will never come back. And I don't think that this after-tax employer contribution is really going to make any headway for, 2 reasons. Number one is it's 1099 reporting. So someone's got to do that. It's probably going to be the TPA, and TPA is going to want to charge for that. I don't like volunteering people to do extra work for no money, but more importantly, it's going to require 100% vesting. And if you got a 6-year graded schedule as an employer, why would you want to vest somebody 100%? Because they want to have it as after tax? To me, it's a lot of work for one person. Who the heck wants that kind of work? To me, reminds me, I don't call, the sidecar IRA. There was a provision that allowed employees to put in to put in their IRA contributions into a 401k plan. Have you ever seen a plan offer that? It was a sidecar IRA, and I've never come across a plan that allowed it. Studies have shown there's a declining interest in the student loan matching. To me, again, for small and mid-sized plans, it seems like a lot of hard work for nothing. You got to certify that this money is going to these payment programs to pay off student loans. Don't see it being very, very popular for, the clientele that I have. Consolidation, again, this is a slide that I had from last year because it will continue. We see it on the RIA side, we see on the TPA side, bigger companies aren't as fast as smaller ones generate the greatest amount of revenue. Larger companies will prune smaller plans or lines that don't generate enough of a return. It will eliminate redundant positions. I had a friend of mine, rep for one of the areas that I had an event last year. She was terminated. Now she's back again with another firm, but her firm got bought out, and she lost her position. And that is what's going to happen in this business. And I hate to see it, but that's the reality of it. One company buys another company. There's always change. I got yelled at when I worked at a TPA firm. We got bought out, and I actually said that to an employee, and that employee had to drop the dime on me. I was told that I was hurting the morale of the place, but it was a place that had the lowest morale. But the fact of the matter is that's inevitable with any business. There's change, and the people that you liked, they may not be around anymore. But if you're not large, all this consolidation in this business to me is an opportunity. Marketing is all about seeing what the competition does and what you do that is unique. This isn't really the cola business where you have Pepsi and Coke. I mean, I haven't seen Diet RC in forever. I know there's Diet Right, but I've yet to drink Diet RC. I remember as a kid they came out with it for about 5 seconds. Never was able to look for it, and I still to this day look for Diet RC, and I don't see it. Which always reminds me of the joke. The Onion ran a article once where it was like the third person was actually tasted RC Cola. And of course, I always have to show these live events. That's why we do the virtual events. We will be in Kauffman Stadium on May the 9th, Friday. We have a guest in mind. We'll get a confirmation probably by Monday. Somebody who's with the TV booth of the Royals, used to play Major League Baseball. And then we'll also be in Angel Stadium, Anaheim, California. That will be a Thursday date. Angels have it where if we did the game and the event on the same day, people who attended the event would actually be forced to go to the game. I'm not joking. They would actually be forced to go to the game. I'd have to run the event from 12 to 5, and you would have no choice, but you'd have to go to an Angels game. And if you look at the Angels standing, and Ohtani's with the Dodgers and what's going on with the LA Dodgers, I don't know if that's cruel and unusual punishment. Probably is if Mike Trout is injured again, but I kid you not. That's why the event is on a Thursday, and if people want to stay around for Friday, I will have some game tickets. And of course, let's go Rangers. There's all the pictures of me and Rangers, and I met Sam Rosen about a couple months ago. He's retiring 40 years after being the voice of the Rangers, and quite honestly, one of the nicest people I ever met. And there is my contact info. So let me stop sharing and see if there are any key question marks. Okay. Yeah, Mike Webb, a great question. What is your least favorite disaster movie of all time? And Mike was on my case that I didn't ask anybody about disaster movies during the roundtable yesterday. That's a good question. What is my least favorite disaster movie of all time? I think there is. The Swarm was pretty bad. Beyond the Poseidon Adventure is really bad. But I will say When Time Ran Out is probably the worst disaster movie of all time. It's just awful. And Paul Newman was asked, what movies did you regret making? And I think he said that volcano movie. When Time Ran Out is the last, I think, Irwin Allen movie. It's just bad. There's a scene where Pat Morita falls into like lava. They were supposed to walk on a wire. They were using, of course, they're like these circus people on this island resort, and they're walking on wires. And Pat Morita, I'm sorry if I spoil the movie. Pat Morita falls to his death, and it looks so fake. But that's really my least favorite movie, and Catch That Again is just so bad. So thank you, Mike, for that question. Best disaster movie of all time, I think, is The Poseidon Adventure, by the way. And that's it. Again, got a shill for my events. Go to that4ksite.com, $100 to attend. We will have Milwaukee up soon. For sign up, that will be in September, so that's why I'm waiting off on a little bit. $100 to attend, $50 per head if you are attending from multiple people from the same firm. The link's up, live and ready, and we're still selling sponsorships. I've had a couple people, companies join up the last week or so you'll see additional marks for them. Our last presentation, Courtney, there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Okay. Courtney from Pacific Life will talk about annuities and all that kind of great stuff. So, Courtney, take it away.
Excellent. Can't seem to get my camera to work, so I apologize. It's telling me it has errors, but that's all right. Know that I'm here. Appreciate you allowing me to join today. I, like Ari said, am with Pacific Life and with our DCLI team. So those of you that are not familiar with defined contribution income, that's what we're here today to talk about. And really just go through kind of the highs and lows of where we've come and the future of lifetime income and 401k plans. I always like to start with, I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, and this year my mother is getting ready to retire. And it is the first time that I've really watched, I think, in person how that works and how income is just such a scary factor. So creating that personal pension, so to speak, which is what we're going to talk about today, is something that a lot of people are actually worried about, and she's extremely set and ready to go. So for her to be worrying makes me worried for everyone else. So that's why I love what I do, and I'm excited to talk to everybody. So a couple of the first slides here, we're going to talk about the need. None of this is going to be, I would hope, shocking to anyone. As an industry, we've done an amazing job about helping tell people how to save. We've talked about saving, saving, saving. We get to termination or of, we're ready to retire, and we don't have a lot of options. We can send it out to a financial advisor. You may some people leave it in the plan and try to just take their own distributions themselves. So giving an extra option through the plan to the participants is becoming obviously more of a topic depending on what other conferences you're going to. I love that I'm the only one here for income, but went to 2 late last year that half the conference was on just income. So is definitely a topic that as an industry we're starting to focus on, and there's a reason. We can see that 40% of households are going to run out of money, no matter their income level. We also have the other side of that coin where retirees are actually underspending what they could spend because they're so worried about overspending. The best laid plans, 61% of workers say their plans for retirement are in jeopardy. And some of that is just purely lack of information and education, and that's what we're here to hopefully do. Got just a couple more stats. Like I said, we've kind of touched on a few of these, but 65% of retirees actually would like a plan for how to spend. And we'll talk a little bit later about how the industry and here at Pacific Life, how we're trying to help prepare people as they get ready for retirement. So it's not just the last day decision when they are ready to retire. As we all know, participants need guidance, flexibility. We need options. 20 years ago when things weren't readily available, and I think the running joke in my family is, if only I could figure that out, and then we Google whatever the question was. Everybody has information at their fingertips, but really where participants are looking for information, especially when it comes to their 401k, is back to the plan sponsor and the advisor on the plan. So we need to be able to help create awareness on what's available, educate, give them resources, and obviously those tools throughout their journey. Because again, it doesn't just end when they retire, even though on the slide it says retirement begins, but that's really when the fun should begin and when we're planning. So here at Pacific Life, our goal is for all of our employees, not just here at our own company, but throughout the nation, to feel confident and financially secure leading up to and for their retirement. We did, however, ask our own employees about their retirement. Great way to sample our own team here. And we're starting to develop and increase our awareness and solutions. I'll be honest, some of the solutions I will talk to you guys about here later are things that we've had for 30 years, but probably no one was aware of because Pacific Life has not necessarily been at the forefront in the retirement plan space. So we're going to start though, just talking about what really is out there because there are a lot of options. So let's talk about what types of solutions, lifetime income solutions that participants can actually do today. So you can take a scheduled withdrawal. There are some education and planning tools. I'll be honest, as we know, technology continues to increase daily. So there's been an uptick in some of those planning tools and softwares, which making it much easier for participants to see if they're saving appropriately, are they going to have enough, versus just being a number at the end of the day that they're trying to hit. I have an old colleague of mine who is getting very close to retirement. She's in the industry. And she still talks about how she just had this number. She has this number she has to hit. And it ceases to amaze me that that is something even she thinks about versus on the payout side. So 30% of plans have lifetime income, and says 27% are considering out-of-plan solutions. Some of the most interesting facts is that actually 80% of participants think they have a lifetime income solution with their plan. Most of them associate that with an in-service withdrawal or just the fact that they can take money out of their plan. So planning for guaranteed lifetime income and lifetime income in general is a nuance that is not as well documented across the industry, and we know that, and that's what we're here to try to help educate. So different approaches to generating income. Like I said, we've got in-plan accumulation annuities, we have immediate income annuities, we have QLACs, systematic withdrawals, managed payout funds, managed accounts. Some of these I'm hoping everyone is familiar with, and some of these you may not be familiar with. So my next chart, this is one of my favorite charts when we start looking about how do we generate income in retirement, because as we've heard even just in the last 2 days, but we already all know, every plan is different. Every plan is going to have a slightly different nuance that they're trying to solve for. You may have a very young demographic. Income is not going to be at the forefront of the concerns. You have plans that have a higher demographic that are getting ready to retire and they don't have options available. And so this is where some of these types of solutions can play in. A couple of things that I like to look at here. The first three options are annuity based. I know annuity sometimes has a negative connotation. I will definitely be the first one to tell you, as someone who's been in annuities for way too long, their annuities are not meant for everyone. But they can be part of a financial plan. So it's not meant for everyone to, we are not telling anyone to put their full 401k into any of these lifetime income annuity solutions. That is not part of it at all. It's more so to help make it part of the plan going forward. The other piece here, so there is the guarantee there, and then this last part that I like to talk about is the predictable level of income. It is hard to predict a level of income with a systematic withdrawal, even some of the managed payout funds, and definitely with managed accounts. We are usually targeting a 4 to 5% withdrawal rate. You're the advisor, and that can sometimes be a hurdle depending on where the market sits. Now, the last 10 or 15 years, we've had a fairly good run, but if your retiree was ready to, or person was ready to, participant ready to retire last year, and you had some big dips, overcoming a 5% withdrawal and then also increasing the account value becomes extremely tough as the advisor. So therefore, you're not only managing the income expectation, but also the investment and expectation. So some of these products are helping us to alleviate some of the pressure on how much the investments have to provide. There is, as you can see, operational complexities. The first one here on the left has the highest. Those are things that have to be built in. It has to be built into a system somewhere, which is why we haven't seen them quite as prominent yet, but they are on the horizon. Like I said, different approaches to generating income. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And so it is part of the plan. And if you'll notice, QLAC and or SPIA, and I will talk a little bit about the difference between those. Like I said, I don't like to assume everybody knows what those are when we use all the acronyms that we have in the industry. But it can be part of the plan, whether you're at retirement or in accumulation phase. There are ways to integrate these types of solutions. I'm going to pause just really quick and take a deep breath since I seem to talk very quickly. All right, do I have any questions yet before I move forward and get into the actual solutions here?
Let me check. No, not yet.
Okay, perfect. All right, just like to take a deep breath for everyone. All right, so the next step, I wanted to talk about what we have here at Pacific Life. And before I get into the actual pieces and parts, a few key things to talk about when we talk about Pacific Life's income solutions. First and foremost, we are not a record keeper. We are agnostic to the record keeper. It does not mean we don't partner with some record keepers and or asset managers for our solutions. But as far as plans go, and some of the solutions we talk about, it is going to be a direct contract with the plan and not with the record keeper or the TPA. There's no extra involvement at this point for them. Everything comes directly to us. And so that is extremely helpful, especially when we talk about these income solutions, that we're not adding another layer of work when a participant is ready to utilize one of these solutions. The work that comes in is just providing them a quote with what those incomes numbers look like. But outside of that, we don't have the same type of oversight, and I'm not adding, again, extra work to someone who maybe doesn't want it, because I know how that works too, as we continue to take on more and try to do as much as we can for our participants. So I'm going to start with the two currently available solutions that we have. And I say currently available because, as I mentioned, some of our more complex accumulation and decumulation income solutions are still in programming, is the best word for that. And so therefore, we'll talk about those as well, but I want to talk first about single premium immediate annuities and a qualified longevity annuity contract, QLAC. These can be used separately or together. We're seeing most advisors, when we are talking to a plan who just is looking for a solution. I want to put something on the plan to address these income needs, at least in this interim as income solutions continue to develop, for participants that are looking to retire fairly soon. I say fairly soon, that could be in the next month, that could be in the next year, or even 18 months. But these solutions come at an institutional level. And so therefore it's going to be slightly higher payouts. And by slightly higher, at least here, so 1.5% to 2% difference to some of our retail. So if you roll it out and the advisor were to buy it separately, sometimes your payouts aren't as high. So this gives the plan an immediate solution. Is simply, like I said, a contracted group annuity contract, and the plan does nothing until a participant would like to utilize it. There are a few things to consider when adding annuities to a plan. It does have to be something that the plan allows. I like to make sure we say that on there. There is an advisor we're working with who has, over 100 plans, and went through and found out that literally 0 of them have that box checked. So it will be an integration on a slower clip than I think originally he had hoped for, because they're going to have to amend plan documents. But for those plans that have already selected it, then it is available today. Makes it very simple. Again, immediate annuities, for those that are not familiar, insurance company, myself, Pacific Life, we take the assets and we agree to a multitude of different options that can be available. It can be a single life payout. It could be a single life with a period certain. It could be a single life with a joint option. So if you do have joint options, and then we also have our cash refund. Now, each of those will have varying payout dollar amounts, but at the end of the day, it does give some flexibility to the participants as well, if they're looking to provide some guaranteed death benefits and things of that nature, make sure that the money is given back. A QLAC is a deferred annuity. The income, again, the payment comes to Pacific Life, and we hold the money until the client or participant has chosen to take it back. So can start as late as age 85. We see some participants that are retiring at 70. They've got a good bucket of money on the front end. They're putting it in the QLAC, deferring it out, starting to take it back at 80. When they defer for about 10 years, it only takes about 3 years to get all of their money back. This does have a cap on it for of 200. It'll be 210,000 this year. So you can't put more than 210,000 in this one. But I've seen a few advisors that are helping to use this potentially for extra healthcare expenses. Again, a higher payout rate when they do decide to take out their money. And you can see here, there's an additional opportunity for tax mitigation for reducing some of those required minimum distributions, which, as we know, in the Secure 2.0 this year with the RMDs, that does help a little bit in there. So we do see our QLAC being used. I will mention that we have recently partnered with T. Rowe Price on one of their managed account solutions, and our QLAC is integrated into their product. Again, just a little bit more here on the SPIA. I know, again, we have a lot of words here. It's Pacific Lifetime Income. It's the best I prefer to call it PLI. Our PLI product can be in plan or out of plan. As mentioned a couple of times here, once the money is ready to go out of the plan, a lot of plans don't want to keep that in the plan. So the nice part here is this, again, all control comes to Pacific Life for that payout option. It is not an all or nothing solution. If a client has a $500,000 401k and they want to just put 200,000 into this, that is an option. It is, again, not an all or nothing, but it will provide the income for life and does have the opportunity for an interest rate increase, COLA, cost of living increase, if so desired. The QLAC, again, to jump on in here. So talk about income selection. Again, we're picking that ahead of time. And does have ours has a standard rate of return of premium. So if you started taking it at 80, God forbid, died at 81, the rest of the money would go back to your beneficiaries. So there is that piece of it. And again, the deferred payments, typically people are waiting 10 to 15 years before they start pulling that income back out. This next slide, I want to just, I guess, reiterate some of the ways that this can be combined, because again, it's not an all or nothing. Plans can have multiple income solutions. You can have multiple income providers. Obviously, adding too many or having too many can be cumbersome if you're trying to maintain and you're the fiduciary responsibility to keep those set. You don't probably want 15 options on there, but having those options on there, again, we're usually pairing our immediate annuity and our QLAC to have both of those options, as we see a lot of clients that are actually using them together before they pull out of the 401k. This slide is one of my favorites. I look at the 401k drawdown, the green box. We can also title that your investment accounts. So once you've pulled out of the 401k, this green box is essentially what income has to be generated from your other investments. Again, as an advisor, sometimes alleviating some of that foundation and having a higher starting point that they don't, to manage to make some of keeping that green longer, makes that easier. So again, doing what they're able to do. I know a lot of plan advisors that don't necessarily want to do the investment portion, but having the capability to provide an immediate or a QLAC can provide some additional revenue as well. Again, working for an insurance company, commission-based products typically. And so if you had a participant decide to choose one of these options, there are ways contractually that the advisor can also be compensated when participants choose that as an income option as part of their financial plan. So again, something further that can be discussed with me at a later time, but just something to note, there are ways to generate income off of that as well. This last one piece for us is our third, our Income Horizon. Income Horizon, like I said, is currently being, so we announced late last year our partnership with Franklin Templeton's managed account solution, Go, and Income Horizon will also be available there. It is one of those that has to be integrated through technology because it is an accumulation and decumulation product. It is where I personally, and I think also my company would stand behind that this is where behaviorally we're going. If a participant pulls up their 401k, sees their bonds, their equities, and there's a third bucket that says lifetime income, and they start seeing that when they're 50, knowing when they get to 65 or 70 and they're ready to retire, they know what that bucket looks like and is going to provide. So during that accumulation phase, it's acting like that other asset class. There's a transparent calculation, and you're buying into an annuity unit. You then, when we're ready to retire, have a lot of options available. One, you can go ahead and elect the income. You know what it's going to be. You've seen it in your account. You've seen the actual dollar values be put there. Or you can say, you know what, that's not what I want to use that for. I have a different option. I'm going to liquidate and reinvest back into my stock, my equities, and my bonds. So this particular solution is going to have the most flexibility for participants and give them, again, a different mindset as they're heading towards retirement than just what do I do when it's time to retire. Especially those participants that aren't necessarily working with a financial advisor or feel they can do some of that on their own. This does help give them that peace of mind. Now, if they do elect the income, it does go to the payout phase, which is illiquid after retirement, which would then be just very much similar to the immediate annuity. So you'll have a lot of similar options there when that comes into play. So again, this is something that will be integrated into a lot of systems. It'll definitely be tied into with managed accounts, and you'll see a few options similar to this from other competitors coming out probably in the near future as well. So before I'll just move on to the last piece here. As I know that there's been a lot, the word fiduciary gets thrown around a lot. It's been obviously talked about. There's a lot of concerns and considerations that you all have to do, and we understand that. And part of that's education, monitoring, making sure you've chosen the right carrier. And so the biggest piece we can talk about here, especially here at Pacific Life, because we're not record keeping and we are truly an add-on. We are here to help with the education. We're here to help with the participant support. We have things that we can help send out and ways to help maintain some of the RFPs and things if that is something that would be of interest. We definitely have our abilities to quote and do things like that as well if that's of interest as well. So that's our future considerations. I did definitely fly right through that, but then, our favorite end of disclosure slide, but I'll finish off by just saying that income solutions are definitely not going away, and are something to consider. If you just have questions or want to discuss what's kind of out there, please feel free to contact me. My team and I are here to help across the country. We will meet with plan sponsors, we'll meet with you to get a feel for what the best way is to approach some of these, especially if it's on your 2025 agenda to start considering how to integrate some of these income solutions to your plans.
Thank you. We did have a question.
Oh, sure.
One question. Some people don't need annuity income or need less annuity income once they start receiving Social Security, particularly if they delay Social Security till age 70. Also, income needs may also be greater between expiration of COBRA and onset of Medicare. Do you offer bridge annuities that provide retirement income from retirement age until age 70?
So in that case, the best, I'm going to say it's not called a bridge annuity, but we do period certain. So to your point, if we know we're going to defer for 5 or 8, 10 years, it is an option we're able to do. So you put the money in and so we start it. We have, that is an option. The QLAC is where we're seeing that bridge later. Again, knowing that you'll get your money back, and it's like 3.5 years, I think, is the break point if you defer for over 7. So again, something we can run some illustrations and talk through if that's something somebody would like to see. We can help illustrate that as well. But the short answer is yes. It's just the terminology we use for
Right.
how we get there.
Right. You want to use the correct terminology.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. I appreciate it. And I think we're seeing in Kansas City, right? Or is that gonna be-
Yes, and
Yeah, okay.
possibly Anaheim. I just hadn't signed up for it yet.
Not a problem. Not a problem. We got first things first. I gotta get through Kansas City.
Yep.
Anyway, again, yesterday's conference is already up on YouTube. If you check that 401k National Virtual Conference 2025 or whatever it is, you'll find it on YouTube. Today's conference will also be available probably tonight. I don't know why it takes Zoom a couple hours to decode or whatever the heck it's doing and moving it on to a format that I could just upload it. But it will be up tonight. And again, thank you for everybody who attended and sponsored and all that kind of stuff. And of course, once again, last time, go to that401ksite.com for information on the live in-person events in Kansas City, Anaheim, and soon to be Milwaukee. So thank you, everybody. Take care.